Great. What a great Tuesday. Let me get this meeting going here. Welcome. This is the agenda for the City Council special meeting. Today's Tuesday, November 30th, 2021 at 4 p.m. We are in the Emergency Operations Center. Ms. Sanchez, may we have roll call, please?
Mayor, all council members are present with Councilmember O'Keefe.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, let's all stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. Where might the flag? Have a flag.
There's a flag.
Okay. All right, we'll do it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, public comment. This is the time set aside for those wishing to speak for items on the agenda. Do we have any public comments? Anybody wishing to speak? No comments? Okay, we're going to move right ahead to item number 4, discussion item, City Council Strategic Plan Areas of Focus. So I would like to kick this off with a couple of thoughts. We all have really bold ideas and a vision for what we want our city to be. And we're so lucky we have some extra funds or additional funds that we can work with. But these funds, we need to really be laser sharp in our focus and application of these funds. We need to look at, if I may suggest, ways from an economic perspective that will add that economic vitality and strength to our city so that Indio becomes the really premier destination for people to live, for businesses, for a quality of life, and create that quality and that sense of economic direction so that we can enhance our resources and our resources grow. That's my 2 cents as we really look to focus in on the strategic plan, and ultimately our goal is to give staff some clear direction so that they can execute. And with that in mind, I'm going to turn this over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt, if we could pull the PowerPoint up just briefly. I did place in front of you, and staff has a copy as well of it's a draft. So please, I know we've already met a couple of times and started talking about a lot of what we're proposing here. In fact, part of the discussion this morning with the department director staff is whether this is becoming more of a work plan as we try to reintroduce the concept of a formal strategic plan to the council. And I'll explain that just a little bit. And then this will really be a free-flowing input session. We have a lot of pins in the room. They're going to take a lot of notes. And of course, staff has provided a lot of input as well. But the key components of any strategic plan is to outline a mission. We've talked about that before. Where should we focus? We'll talk about that again today. Some general goals within those areas and related to those goals and objectives, because that's another word we could use for the word goal, is what is our objective in public safety? What is our objective in community beautification, community infrastructure? But for us, and I know some of the items that, because I've emailed this to the city council and the staff has helped prepare some some action items rather, that's where it feels a little bit more like a work plan. Like, what are we going to do to help accomplish these goals and objectives? So some of them may seem a little bit mundane. Some of them are larger than others. And let's talk through those. But as an example, and the staff team is tired of me using this example, but it's the best one I can think of. So you've got here a crew that's rowing a boat, right? And so in one of my department director discussions with the team, I talked about making sure we're all hitting the oars in the water at the same time, that we don't have some, rowing at one speed, some at another. We're not going to gain a lot of traction if we're not all hitting the water at the same time. Well, and I think I did share this example before, but our good friend Trish Ray, who's now left us to go back home to Seattle, she said, Brian, I used to be on a crew. I used to be a rower, and our coach said that when you finally as a team all hit the water at the same time, when everybody's got that cadence down, we know what direction we're going, we know what the cadence is, there's a sound There's a sound when each one of those oars hit the water at the same time and flows through. And her coach called it the angel's wind, that there's this feeling of momentum and thrust as we move forward. So a goal of any work plan, strategic plan is as best as possible. We're all different personalities. We have the policymakers that are the ultimate bosses in this room. And of course, we have the residents that are the top of our organizational chart and are the ultimate bosses, I should have said. But the more focused we are, the more we're on the same page, the more we can hit the water at the same time. Even if we're not in full agreement, but we have a consensus, we'll move forward. But while we're all rowing, you can imagine if one of these rowers decides, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I disagree. And so you stick one oar in the water with the other 8 trying to go in the same direction. Pretty soon the boat just stops or it's going to turn direction. So the goal for us, as the mayor wisely stated, is at the end to get your clear direction. We're probably 2 steps away from that after this meeting. But that's the goal. And then this quote, some of you can see closely, but you representing as the elected officials, the residents here, those of us that live in Indio, you need to tell us what are the right things we should do. What do you want us to accomplish? It's our task to do them in the right way, to do them efficiently, professionally. We want to implement what your plan is. So the plan is being disciplined on what those right things are. I doubt we have unanimity, but once we hit a consensus, we march forward. So it's that discipline, direction of how we can improve the community is really what we're working toward. And from a staff perspective, we then get this document. And if you see in the draft, there are check boxes for us. And again, we don't want to merely just say, we got that one done, we got that one done. Because if we have the right things on that list, we will be accomplishing things that our constituents want. And as the mayor stated, we'll be making Indio an even better community. That is our goal. And so let's talk today and brainstorm things that we can do in whatever areas of focus we settle in on. What should we be doing to make this a better community? We're fortunate to have some one-time monies available. So our very next meeting would be to price out this brainstorming, these action items, and come back to you. And you would say, okay, here's what we talked about. Here's what we think they'll cost. And tell us what you want us to accomplish and prioritize. So that's kind of the flow today. These areas of focus, again, can be discussed. Some of them got a little bit combined and combobulated since the last discussion. But we should find the areas we should focus on. Doesn't mean that we can't have some ancillary things going on. But if we get too distracted on matters that may not even be within our purview or full control, then it's an opportunity cost. If we shift our focus on anything that is not of the highest priority, it takes time and money away from the highest priorities. So again, the goal is to make sure that we find at least these general areas of focus. Public safety being, of course, the highest priority. It's where we spend most of our money and have the largest staff. But the question is really, where can we even do better? So just quickly, this is the objective that we discussed, but certainly can massage. But under this realm of public safety, our objective is to make sure that we're taking the steps necessary to have an effective and efficient police, fire, ambulance services, as well as our emergency planning, to make sure we're providing these critical public service. So that's our goal and objective. And the idea is, well, then how can we better do that? And whenever we get into this type of discussion, it's not saying that we're doing a terrible job now. In fact, in many respects, we're doing a very, very good job, an excellent job. But the brainstorming and the concept is, what should we keep doing? Maybe there's some things we should stop doing, but what should we stop doing or keep doing or add to the list to make sure that we better fulfill that objective? Another one is community infrastructure. Another one is community beautification. And we can massage those. So we have a couple of places that we could start. Let me just flow to the next step here before we open it up. I'm probably blocking you there. So the area of focus under public safety, we just talked about the goal, the objective. The idea then is to have some items, a work plan, that if we accomplish those items, we will be helping to achieve that objective. Again, are there things we're doing we should stop doing? Are there things that we should do that we're doing that we can keep on doing, or what should we add? The mayor, in a discussion last week, as we discussed this meeting, said one way to think of this is, how could we take the next step? How could we advance and enhance our efforts in public safety? So if we could brainstorm some of those ideas, staff has gone through and identified a handful of suggestions. Here are some key questions then relating to those action items. What are some projects and programs we should focus on to accomplish the goal in each area? What can be done to advance our efforts? How can we do better? If we're not meeting your expectations as a city council, and you feel like we're not meeting the expectations of the people that elected you, our constituents, we need to know. And I know sometimes that's an uncomfortable situation or a conversation, but we need to know, and we want to know. And then the very next step, which would be our subsequent meeting, and our effort would be to price out these items that you're suggesting that we do, the staff has come up with, to move us forward. So I'll stop talking here in a minute, but here is what is in your draft. I cut those on a PowerPoint just for those that might be watching us at home to be able to see some of the items. But for example, and we can better define this, but phase one of the public safety campus is a new 911 dispatch center, a new public safety administrative office building, and a new fire station, all on South Jackson. I think the council's already decided this, and the community is aware of it as we went through Measure E. If we're able to complete those projects, we will be enhancing our ability to serve the public in the area of public safety. So it's a pretty clear-cut one, I would think. But there are other ideas as well. The chief will speak to it to some degree and has in the past, that we have such an antiquated software system, let's call it records management system in the PD, that we're not able to have the analytics that are necessary for us to deploy the officers in the most efficient way possible, and to follow up on what they encounter, the reports they file, the prosecution documents that are sent to the DA's office and so forth, and as we dispatch folks. So that's an idea. You've already discussed as a city council that we should bring in some state-of-the-art body-worn camera systems. Ours right now is not working properly. We have some, not every officer has them. They're difficult and cumbersome. The data storage is difficult. I think you've heard that story through the budget process, but you can see how just those three examples, if those are things we accomplish and you feel comfortable and you think that meets the expectations of the community, we will be improving our public safety capacity for our residents. And there are a number of other items. So Mayor, I'd probably leave it open, and we're ready to maybe even take some notes. We could go through some of these items, or perhaps just opening it up right now, first to the council members, and then we've got both chiefs here and code enforcement as well. What are some things that we could do to enhance and advance our services in public safety? Can you think of some that maybe we didn't list on the suggested items? Any of the council members or staff want to chime in? Mayor, I'd let you kind of call on whomever you want.
I think, absolutely. I want this to be a pretty flow of ideas. And council member, I think we should hear public safety. I'm setting the perception that our public safety is. Perception. This is the negative perception is the biggest contributor to the public doesn't think so. Make sure that the information benefits this. It's just look at what the other media covers. So much higher perception than our sister city. It's just because. So I really. Thoroughness is better than the rest.
And I think to echo that, as has been discussed, and it's happened since I've been here only a handful of months, there'll be a report in the newspaper, what's taking place at the courthouse, and the byline says Indio, and it's about somebody from Desert Hot Springs that murdered someone from Palm Springs, yet Indio is in the title or in the byline. It's not right. It's not fair. Maybe there's a way. I know I've talked to the Desert Sun folks and others. Is that how it comes out, Brooke, from like the press?
But there's no way that report that had changed. One and
They're here.
what I'm talking about is.
Well, that might be an example then, not to interrupt, but so that might be something we're doing that we need to stop doing.
Recording in progress.
They don't want that information being disseminated. They can go ahead and certainly report it to the marketing department, and the marketing department can, in a grander scale or a grander story, talk about some of the positive things that public safety is doing, rather than for the focus to be on the negative, which is just adding to our negative perception of public safety.
The other council members chime in on that. It sounds like a reasonable effort.
I think to expand on it is one of the things to where as society, we get used to putting so much out to get so much back or get some feedback or get traction from the community. And there's just some things that may not be beneficial to put out, right? And if it's something that pertains to safety or road construction or things of that nature, yes, by all means, we need to put that out. But there's some things that maybe need to stay in-house. I think what's happened is in our world, we've gotten caught up in the word transparency. And sometimes transparency doesn't mean just putting everything out. It may be just, it's available if you request it, right? And so there may be some things that we don't necessarily have to put out, but we have a public information officer at our police department if someone is requesting some information, or we have Public Request Act if they want to request information. But we don't have to necessarily put everything out to feed into that perception of our city, because for the folks who have been here, they know that our city and our valley has changed immensely. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, this is the safest I felt in our community. And it's a testament to the hard work from top to bottom, from our faith-based community, our school districts, our council, our community. And so it's been a collaborative effort over the years. And I think that's what's happening. We're getting caught up in the social media world and getting attention. And maybe we just say, hey, it's available. If you need it, contact the public information officer and he'll get that information to you.
But that's also what I'm talking about. Up until this point, we've been functioning as three separate organizations. Public safety does their own thing. Water authority does their own thing about getting information out to the public. And then internally, we've done better lately because we have somebody doing it, but we never did anything prior. So everything needs to come through one channel is what I'm trying to say. All public requests have to go to the city clerk. There shouldn't be anything going directly to the police department. That's what I'm trying to make the point that, the left foot is shooting the right foot and there's no coordination. And I think it's adding to the negative perception of our public safety. And I'd rather focus on the positive things than to keep trying to clean up our perception, which is something we've been doing for decades.
And we have a success story to tell. And we've tried at times, but maybe that's something we need to to focus on. Maybe we'll let Glenn speak before Chief. If you had any thoughts on this, or Elaine?
I can kind of concur with that. I mean, it's trying to get information out. So it isn't sexy, a lot of the stuff we put out. I mean, the stuff that gets done, code enforcement, quality of life teams all behind the scenes. That's stuff that gets done and people just take for granted. You know, the new officers we hire, we need to, I think, focus on that. And Lupe's right, you know, trying to figure out how we can streamline it. That's part of it. But it's what they see. I'd say most I get involved with it, talk to me, or issues with like speeding. Where's your police officers? Where are they? They don't see them. They see them in the cars. We take our police officers, we're limited to what we do and use them in other areas because of an issue. If we had 3 motorcycle police officers that cruise in different parts of the cities and rotated around, because you go down India Boulevard, you go down Fred Ware, and you go down Miles, they're going 60, 70 miles an hour. You've seen it from the walls people have hit. If we could start positioning that where people would see our police officers on bikes or whatever, in cars, where all they're doing is enforcement, it would slow people down. It would give our residents a pause, not only to know that they're out there, but at the same time, realize that they've seen them doing different things and they would be out there all the time. They see when they're passing by, when they're going through and they're doing beats, and there's minimum what we have. We have to invest. We need to go back into public safety. We need to go for our military and our local people to get more police officers, men and women, to come in. But at the same time, we do need to have a presence in our community where they see those patrol officers going through and doing other things than what they need to do. And that would give them a lot of peace of mind because, like I said, they just don't see them. So people go down, going down Jefferson, you see people going 70 miles an hour, no, right through the stop sign, right through the stoplight. They're not worried about it whatsoever because they know there's nobody there to do it. But if they were wondering if there was going to be like you do, if you go down Fred Waring, the sheriff, Indian Wells, you never know when that motorcycle police officer is going to be sitting there. You're always looking, you're always alert, and the residents always know that it's out there.
Well, one component you bring up is a suggestion that's one of the action items is reestablish the traffic control unit to increase speed enforcement efforts. So that helps some visibility, but the officers, as much as they're out and about, the more they can be out of the cars and walking or being visible. I'm sure there's more we can do with that. That's a clear action item that would improve public safety.
I think public safety in terms of being inside and keeping on traffic control and stuff would help. I know we have so many needs because we're shorthanded, but there's got to be a point where you control stuff where the community feels that there's other things being done than just the bad stuff they read. Because usually when our police officers are involved, it's in something that's bad, and that's what they like to report. It's not all the great things they do, like the quality of life team. It's the guy that gets shot, or the guy that's causing a problem, or the guy at the hospital that got beat up or something. They want those stories to be the lead, and we've got to lead with our own stories with our community and our police department out there. I think visibility is a big issue for us. I think it's something we need to address along with the speeding. I don't know how many more walls we can take. Plus the 7-car pilot we just had the other day.
I know, and I ran into one on coming out here to, but I think certainly visibility and presence is huge. And I know that the chief over the years of that recently, but bring more folks on board, and that's really sets the tone. And the more officers are present, the more that helps with that perception. But I agree with Lupe. For years, we are dealt with it's Indio. There's gangs in Indio. Don't go to Indio. Don't move to Indio. And we have the Indio press. Nothing ever happened at all with each other. But in Indio, it was like 4 calls. And it's not part of my and we said at that moment, we said, hey, if we pull back a little bit on the constant information, close out the public, and then the answer is no. We have to be transparent about everything all the time. And my question is, I totally remember what we're doing. Does that truly benefit us? All we have to do is have a finger render.
When we know they have more, we see their crime reports, not that they publish those, there certainly is more. law enforcement is a perception often as a reality. So even if you are safe, but you perceive you're not, then you've got a problem. Chief, you probably want to address some of this discussion, but I think in the end, there certainly is a consensus, and perhaps Oscar wants to jump in as well, that there might be some more we could do certainly to help tell our story, our success story.
So I guess starting with reality, we rarely push anything out without them asking. If it's a public safety issue, as we're looking for someone or we need the public's help, then we proactively push stuff out. But generally, I don't know, 4 or 5 times after hours, we're texting each other back and forth. And Ben is always, I've got no requests from the media, so we don't talk about it. You guys get the significant reports that I send out, and some of that stuff's reported, some of it's not. Our media is frankly lazy. Our media doesn't really go after stories. They really ask us to write them ourselves almost. So we're not pushing anything out just because we know about it.
And what should we say back to the suggestion when we are asked, how do we
Why do we have to answer?
just say we have no comment?
I have no comment, just like the sheriff. The kitten got stuck in the tree and the firefighter got him out. That's all the king ever says.
Well, that's a fire issue. I know. We don't deal with cats and trees.
But
We don't have
let's
to.
say we have a stabbing, let's say somewhere, and the media says, it was,
It's under investigation. That's what we
Under-
always say.
what do you think what are your thoughts on that?
If we don't tell them what we know, they're gonna make it up. And that's the problem with remaining silent. They're gonna man on the street, hey, what did you see?
But why do they only do it to us then and not all the other cities?
I think that's kind of, I think it's kind of changed. You can look at it now. I mean, we're not on the TV as much as we used to. In the 80s and 90s. And there's things going on in other cities. But that perception started to accelerate. There was a point in time when we were always on the newspaper and the media. But, to speak to what the chief's talking about, sometimes we do have to tell our own story. And we do need to focus on quality of life team. What some of the officers are doing at the schools, our resource officers. Sometimes it's that. Sometimes that is important to show the community, hey, through our efforts, our rates have gone down. So, but, we are the biggest community in the valley. So when there's 2 or 3 things going on off strength, it might be 4 things here, but we look at the news today, or the last couple of weeks, we don't see anything. We see other cities. That speaks to the hard work that's going on. But to piggyback off of Councilmember Miller with the speeding, I definitely support that. I think as we get out in the community and work with our schools and our young adults, we need to really focus on the dangers of speeding and what can happen out there. We've all been young and we've had those fast cars, but it's dangerous, and we have to really talk to our young adults about that. I've been very vocal about that on social media, because you can look at our roads and talk to our public works team about the money we put in our infrastructure. And you go out to some of the roads and you see race marks on some of the roads, and it's very dangerous. We just had that 7-car pileup, and so we do need to focus on speed, and whether it's more signage, whether it's speed bumps, whether it's more officers being in strategic places to maybe write some tickets. Unfortunately, if that's what it takes. But we're going to have to be a little bit more proactive, and the community has to understand it's not just to meet a quota. That's let's do the thing they're trying to meet a quota. It's about safety.
Well, on that front too, and the chief and I have talked about it, where else I've served. If officers, there's a point where we write a lot of tickets and that sometimes has an impact, but it also has an impact when an officer pulls over the soccer mom or you and me and says, ma'am, you've been at 55 and a 35. It's dangerous. We have that little talking to, but we're polite and professional, but there's no ticket. It still sends a message. People are driving by and see the officer pulled over or see the person pulled over. So it doesn't mean we have to write tons of tickets to still send the message, but Brooke probably has a perspective for a number of reasons. What do you think? The need to know, but historically and otherwise, it seems like we've got a story that isn't as positive ingrained into the valley about India.
I think that the proactive PR component of it is really very important. Within a vacuum of information, the stories that are the lowest hanging fruit are those that will get the most play. That's certainly true. The police department does a lot of very positive things, and we are somewhat reactive when it comes to issues within the police department. I don't know necessarily that we have the breadth to be able to proactively tell those positive stories. I think we're trying to do that. But I mean, as an example, I think there were two very parallel stories that came out in the paper within the last few months regarding crime statistics between Indio and another city. And Indio's was quite negative. And if you guys recall, the story just came out a couple of days ago. It was almost the opposite story, even though the statistics are really not that different. The headline makes it appear as if Indio is problematic and other cities are not. And so to get out ahead of those, when we know that there are crime statistics that are coming out, and to really highlight and promote those parts of it that are positive, I think will pay dividends.
So there are some relationship strategies there with the media, I think, to help not spin that, but give the reality. You're referring to an article this last Sunday that had crime statistics that were similar or worse than ours, but the tone was totally different.
It was totally different. And what the timeliness was for that article, I'm not exactly sure. Ours, the one that came out about Indio, certainly had to do with the release of those numbers. But I don't know why the other article came out this past weekend. But there are still elements of getting out ahead of that. We know what our numbers are. We provide those numbers to the FBI. And so to have our own perspective on them ready and available to tell the story before someone has the chance to tell it for us, I think is an opportunity we should be taking.
Well, it seems like there's some consensus on that matter. I wonder if Councilmember Ortiz might want to chime in on this idea of the community perception in law enforcement or public safety.
Yeah, on that side of the perspective, I think if we can't control what the media is going to do too much, right? And like the chief said, if we don't say anything, then they'll spin it their way. So I think if we give out consistent data, if we have numbers that we can show people, I think that builds a little bit more trust, and not just showing the good numbers, but also the bad, right? Because if we're showing both sides of it, then when we come, ask the community for if we need extra officers, they're going to say, well, it's going so well, why do you need extra officers, right? If you're saying that everything's so safe. So I think we just need to be, if we share accurate information consistently, then I think that would work. Work well for us. On the side of racing, I think we spoke a couple of weeks ago about getting some cameras that are going to be strategically placed throughout the city. And maybe if we have some common areas where we see a lot of racing, maybe that's somewhere we could put those cameras to use so that we can spot some of those racers out there. As well as, I'm not sure if the speed bumps, I know there's a lot of regulations on those, where they can go, where they cannot go, but we do need to look at those because we do get a lot of complaints about the speeding, especially at night. And you can hear it, for my neighbor, I was hearing it last night, or I think it was Sunday night, you could hear it throughout the neighborhood. So people know that it's a danger out here. The other side, I think, the suggestions here, great job by our city manager and our staff in putting this together. I think there's some really great suggestions here. One thing that I saw that I think is missing is addressing mental health, right? And I think part of it is, with the quality of life team, but I think we have the behavioral health center coming, but I think we still need to do more on that side. And we do have some great nonprofits that are doing great work here. I know the Latino Commission has a few homes where they house people and they take care of people, and we never hear any complaints about those homes because they're well managed. So if we look at some of these programs that are well managed and they're nonprofits, that they're doing good work out here, we should look at it and investing in some of those programs as well. That's all I have. Thanks.
City
Well-
Manager, I want to piggyback on that and some of the comments. Talking about some of these things, when we go back, I think we need to really converse with the chiefs and come up with strategic ways that they see fit that would work as far as being proactive and in this area. You know, I've sat in that seat before, so it's kind of hard when, you know, that's not really our expertise. But if you have a chief that specializes in investigations and some of these things, there's some things proactively I think that could be done that our PD could really focus on and come up with and bring it back to us, you know. And, you know, we talked about some things that may be coming forward. But going to the mental health and quality of life team, we spoke about these things before, and I spoke to the city manager about this today. I think we really need to focus on being that resource where people could come to, whether it's on our website, whether it's a hotline, whether it's on our social media, weekly putting something out as it pertains to homeless services, mental health services, our county partners, our nonprofits, because I think that's where we're going to be the most effective of pointing folks in the right direction and actually supporting some of these things on the back end. We do have the behavioral health clinic coming online, but focusing on that is kind of tough, you know, from staff perspective, right? How can staff really focus on these things? Well, we could be that resource for the community. If you do have, you know, a person who is chronically homeless in your community and you call this hotline or you look on the website and say, okay, this is what our services we have as far as the city of Indio and our regional partners, I could call this number or get on this website for assistance.
Yeah, Wayman and I spoke earlier. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the 211 system. My understanding is the county contracts with United Way, but much like you call 911 for an emergency, if you have a social services emergency, you can call 211 or go on the website at 211 and find resources. That's one way to focus on that. Before we jump to a couple of the others, I think there is consensus that we develop as part of the strategic plan, a work plan on fighting this perception of the negative perception of crime in Indio. Maybe some of these relate to that, particularly the homelessness. But are there any other discussions? If we include that as an action item, that we find some proactive marketing plan and a strategy?
I think we just need better internal controls and coordination. I still don't understand why we have three different organizational approaches.
Yeah, I think we've got a lot better coordination on the IWA side. It's just been historic what Ben has done, and just, you know, it's a 24-hour day.
It's time to end. Cut it out. Quit. Stop. It's not working.
I actually think it is working, and it's working quite well. So one of the things when media gets a hold of, this is can you verify this is the suspect you have? Our relationships drive the fact that we can tell them, can you hold on to that story until we get somebody in custody?
But why don't they do that to the sheriff is the question.
They
Or if
do.
The sheriff says no comment. It's an ongoing investigation. I'd rather say that.
That's certainly
I guess I don't know what the specifics would be.
Any crime, they don't need a print. We had a 7-car collision. They don't need a print. We had a teenager hang himself.
When it occurs in the public, it's hard to hide it. I don't know why you would shy away from that. It goes to our integrity and transparency.
It goes to the negative perception more than anything.
Any others chime in? We're here to take your direction. You know, I think there's a balance, probably like everything.
Those are two extremes.
Yeah. But if it is true, you know, the sheriff's office is a different form of policing typically than the municipal law enforcement. But if they're somehow blown off the media and the media is just used to them being blown off, then they don't follow up with them anymore. But we've responded, so they respond to us. I got your point.
They have a relationship with us, so they know they're going to get anything.
They'll get the juice.
So what is the suggestion?
It's an ongoing investigation. That's what we
Well, I
think.
mean, you can't answer everything like that. You have to give them something, but would it be to coordinate with the marketing on all three sectors? And do we have the capacity to do that?
Well, no, I mean, that would have to be beefed up. That's why I said fire all these people from the other organizations that are shooting
I don't know about fire.
our own organization.
Thank
you. Make one consolidated media. And you know what? They call on a Sunday at 8 a.m. Too bad. You wait till Monday at 10 a.m. to get a response. And the response may still be. it's an
Or-
ongoing investigation, no comment.
We're still evaluating. And maybe over time, I think over time they get used to that's what the response is and it'll end up being like where the
I think
sheriff's
we
office.
need to drive the conversation instead of trying to figure out how to react to their.
Well, this idea of-
Views proactively.
I agree. But I also think we need, and maybe we just need to test that. My concern, since I've been in India with the police in the city, and the perception is that they'll make it up. A lot of people decides to say they'll make it up as they go.
Yeah, but they'll also print corrections. They don't print them as big.
Yeah, what perception
But I
is.
think the more, and we can put out a press release like Roxanne did the other day, stating the facts, the truth, when they do print the wrong information.
I just think that we have to be careful. There will have to be some coordination with our PIO from the PD and which would be Brooke and her department. Because I mean, I could tell you from experience and I could tell you from on a national level, I mean, we've had, national cases where we've had politicians come to the podium and just start talking because they heard a chief or somebody talking and putting that information out. So it's important that we not only put our story out, but we utilize them as well to keep that partnership. So I don't know how we're going to do that with all three sectors and the staffing that we have.
I think there's I think a few things, and I think there is a consensus, and it makes good sense that we coordinate the public information efforts, that we find a balance of when we provide information and when we don't. Some discipline from all of us, including myself, electeds and others, when they're approached by the media, drive it back to that one source that Lupe is referring to, so we can get the same message out, or no message at all, no comment. Because there is a temptation when we're asked by the media to say something, and that probably hits you guys more than it hits staff.
Yeah, I think we're just too super responsive in some.
It's working against us.
Sorry, could you please speak into the microphone? We can't really hear online.
Thank you. I guess my comment was, I don't think that, I think we need to work a little harder on this. I think we need to fine tune it. I don't know that I would go as far as to limit maybe ban, but maybe have more communication. There's no person in this community that has a bigger heart for the city of Indio and wants to project nothing but positive components. But maybe some of that needs to be fine tuned a little bit and funneled so that a different message or a different manner or style or approach takes place.
I don't think he was ever intended to be a dedicated public information officer. He's a community liaison. And he does an excellent job of staying in touch with all of our apartment complexes, all of our homeowners associations. I mean, he has a great role. I think the public information aspect was just dumped on him because nobody else wanted to do it. But
Well, I think we've got a good framework for us to develop some sort of work plan. So we add in the strategic plan that we will develop a work plan to help fight this perception. We'll come up with some better wording and strategies, but you probably can't read my scribbles. These are as much for me as anyone else, but positive messaging, that positive PR, more public interaction from the officers, more visibility. The cameras are mentioned. It is listed in here, but the cameras can provide additional resources to help us identify those that might be committing crimes, leaving the community or even coming into the community. Consolidating our efforts amongst the different information that's going out. We can develop that. This other segment, we do have an item in here to continue, and maybe we need to provide some more detail.
I think Oscar has raised his
Oh,
hand. It's hard to
yes.
see.
Yeah, no, the only thing I was going to say is that I do appreciate the work that the chief and the people running the media for the Indio Police Department are doing, because I do see a lot of support on their social media posts. I do see a lot of people following them and giving them, because I see, different times when they post, different crimes that they've solved or different people that they've caught or weapons that they've taken off the street. So I do see a lot of positive feedback from those. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank
I
you.
concur with Oscar. I think police department and media are two separate things. I think you're biting off your hand. There's some negative stories always going to happen every time there's something goes wrong. It's always going to become a negative story. And I'll say it, the Desert Sun always writes good things about Palm Springs because they're in there. And then there's 10 articles from Palm Springs and one article or two articles on the rest of the communities. So, it's kind of a Palm Springs paper, but it seems like they lead the stuff that's not very attractive. There's always going to be a reasonable amount of issues that happen in every city, no matter where you are. It's just how you highlight them. I think is what Loopy's trying to get at is do you highlight if you have a lot of home burglaries or whatever you're doing, do you push that out? And I think that's where the happy medium's got to be. But I think it's awareness. If we see people see us out in the community, traffic control, doing other stuff and more, it will give them a better perspective of what it is. When we start downtown, we need to have a police officer down there on a bicycle in that so that people feel comfortable and safe at the very start. So when it comes to the road, they'll see, oh, yeah, and it'll become, like you said, continuity. People start to feel, oh, yeah. And I don't think it's a perception of the city of Indiana Police Department as a whole. I think we've had some negative press, but as a whole, I think, I'd take our police department over anybody's anytime. I love the sheriff.
Yeah.
And what he's done in our community. But like I said, ours are homegrown and they're here to support our residents.
The community does love the officer, like it loves the department. I think that's certainly true. It's reassuring. It might be a good segue. We'll work on this plan. I think that's a great strategic discussion to help us improve public safety. The other quality of life, for example, I've gone on some ride-alongs and I see the virtue and the success of that unit. An example, however, is if 4 in the unit, we have a sergeant, 3 officers. Does that ring a bell?
3 officers. The sergeant has more than that duty, but yeah.
So you see how if it is a zero-sum game and we want to and if resources were as finite as they probably are on a operational basis, is traffic control more important than the quality of life team? Do we need to make sure our officers are running more traffic than they typically are now? Will the call volume allow for that? It just may be a zero-sum game. The mental health issues as well. I'm a purist as a city manager. It may not surprise you that some of these services are not traditional municipal services. It doesn't mean we can't be progressive and think of new and better ways of doing things. But if we, for example, hired some mental health folks and so forth, it could relieve the officers. And we did receive a grant to help with some of that. But it will mean that if we spend $300,000 on mental health services, that's probably 2 police officers aren't on the street. Maybe that is a force multiplier, maybe it's not. So you see that discussion is real. And maybe Chief, before we open that one up just quickly, what are your thoughts on way we're evolving in that regard?
Kind of goes back to some of the media stuff as well. So probably once a week, someone around the nation is touting this program that we've had here for a while, which is having a mental health professional act. So having a mental health professional in the vehicle with the officers has really paid big dividends. And we want to keep that program and hopefully get the county to pay for it. But because of a lot of our successes, they've expanded that program and are adding 9 more mental health professionals across the county. I don't want to share though, because
We have plenty of volume here.
that relationship really works well. We've used Cynthia for a lot of stuff that's kind of outside that scope, but she has a skill set and some resources that our officers just don't have.
Is there any council comment? Particularly if we can continue to get the funding for homelessness, mental health, social services. Unless you're a very large city, almost all of that goes to the county. So it's an idea of trying to get more resources from the county. If our grant drops off, how do we get the county to help provide some of those backfill that resource? Because it's $170,000 grant, something like that.
It was 2.1 million.
Oh, 2.1 million, maybe that's.
Or 1.9, I'm sorry. 1.9.
So, when that's exhausted, what do we do? That's going to be the key question.
It goes back to the quality of life, but I think all these things can go back, whether it's the traffic officers or the quality of life team or mental health. It goes back to finding that balance. I think we do an extraordinary job with our quality of life team. I can't tell you how many times I have to explain what, that they exist and what they do and so on and so forth. And having that person to assist from the mental health perspective and beyond, I think is huge. We need some traffic cops out there. We need some officers that can be more visible. And I think that does an enormous, we need, that's not a comment against what I'm saying is we need more in order to have them be more visible out there. And some of the traffic issues that I see are significant. Everything has to be a balance and nothing's going to be 100%.
Yeah, I think what be beneficial to us is, like I said, let the chief go back. I've met with the chief and the assistant chiefs on some of these issues before, especially traffic, because it's dangerous out there. But there's strategies and ways how to address these issues without the manpower right now, and I think the chief could probably elaborate on that more, but there's things that we could utilize to work on that until we do have the visible manpower, or we do operations, but that's out of my realm in this conversation. But I think those are things that we can entertain. Now, when it comes to the quality of life, I don't know if we can expand on the behavioral health therapists. I've called 911 myself with the transient, and our quality of life team showed up. I watched her work, and they do an excellent job. And if we want to have a sidebar or something with our quality of life team and the chief, it would be beneficial to also hear from them, because they're on the front lines of dealing with some of these things, because some of these issues are conversations are uncomfortable to have with the public, but the public has to actually know what our officers are dealing with when we're going to parks or we're going to the front of the business. I mean, our mayor's a small business owner. There's folks who are housing reluctant, who don't want to help, and our quality of life team has to deal with these folks on a daily basis. Meanwhile, our residents are calling us, or they're calling the city about someone who's camped out at an encampment in front of their house or in their neighborhood, and our quality of life team has to deal with this. But at the end of the day, they really don't have any traction because of laws and things like that. So we have to look at that in our city from a holistic way, how we can address some of these issues.
Thank you for saying that, because they don't have the tools. These folks do an amazing job without having all the tools to make it happen, and with laws that constrain significantly.
I think getting some more regular reports, whether that's a quarterly report at the city council for the public to show what we're doing. I know it's been, and I think Lupe's helped lead the charge, but as a newcomer, I come and I see the influx of homeless. I've been on these ride-alongs, even with the rescue mission. When I was at Dr. Carrion Park, those folks there, they said they were dropped off by Palm Springs PD. Whether they were telling me a story or not. So we've got the facilities here, that's the justification. Well, we brought them to the services. Why are we spending all of this money to handle the valley-wide problem? And I know CVAG's got an effort, but it would seem to me as a newcomer, being very naive, jumping into a hornet's nest probably, why aren't the other cities participating financially more in this effort?
We're getting there. We're getting there. And I could say this honestly, council member Meet really kind of pushed this a few years back, and I think that started the machine going. And there's more services coming in Palm Springs. They do have some transitional things going on in Palm Springs. CVAG has some transitional housing. CVAG also has the CV 200. And I think working with CVAG and our quality of life team, let's identify those folks who are actually from the city of Indio, and let's target them. But we do have folks who travel up and down the valley. You could be in Indio one day, downtown, grabbing coffee, and tomorrow go up to Palm Springs, and that same person to be downtown Palm Springs. So how could we work, and there's a lot of moving pieces. We have the rest commissions, we have CVAG, so there's a lot of moving pieces, but how can we work collaboratively to target the folks who are from Indio and get them the services? But it all boils down to the manpower and the time. Do we have the capacity to do these things?
It is to some extent a hornet's nest. It's something Lupe and I have been working on for years and years and years. And the last time I was on the homelessness committee, it was Indian Wells and Ratchamarra. So we'll give $100,000. We'll give it to India. Really, thank you. And that's one of the darned if you do, darned if you don't. You support the services, and yet at the same time, as we support the services and they enhance their services, then we have more coming. I mean, I cringed when I read the article in the paper that there's going to be a citizens group in Palm Springs that are going to deal with the homeless. I am afraid to death of what that means, which the answer is going to be send them to Indio, because the city of Palm Springs and other communities, I will give the due to Cathedral City, who has tried. They have tried, but nobody wants it. Not in my backyard. So we'll just give more money to the city of Indio, and they will continue to grow. And we'll just grow Rescue Mission, we'll grow Martha's Village, and more people will come. And people don't understand the resources it takes, the police resources, et cetera.
Well, I'm talking about perception again as a newcomer. Most homeless, as we watch them and drive by, may not be committing a crime.
Right.
But it doesn't help our perception of law enforcement to see so many homeless and what they may be doing, particularly late at night in different areas of the community.
Well, even like Palm Springs, they recently just approved a wraparound facility, fusion center in North Palm Springs. That's after years of pushing. So there's some traction there. Nonetheless, being the second seat of the county, having a lot of social services here, have the well-established Rescue Mission and Martha's, folks gravitate towards Indio. Now, how could we work with them? And I think those are conversations we need to have with the community, our council, and start identifying folks who are here and what are their exact issues. Why are they on the street? Why do you want help? And if you talk to our quality of life team, that's what they're encountering. The chronic homeless that we have out there, that the everyday folks that people are seeing on the street, are not folks who are trying to get services. Those are folks who have some challenges, whether it's mental illness, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's alcohol, or they're just running from a situation. So I think we need to really be a home for resources where we can start getting these folks help.
Yeah, one thing I suggested that I'm not sure, in talking with the sergeant, quality of life sergeant, and others, we don't have a very good case management database. And perhaps our new RMS system will allow that, but we identify, Jason Johnson, that's the homeless person. He's from Iowa, and we contacted him at 2:15 on the 30th of November, and this is what he said, and it's in a file. And so the next time someone comes across Jason Anderson, they can type that up in their system, and there's this documentation of our interactions. Where I came from, we knew, who was their next of kin, their cell phone number, because many of them have cell phones. We documented, and sometimes that case management helped them get the services, or if they passed away, we know who to contact.
The county has that system, but I don't know if they'd allow
It's,
public safety
they
to
do
tap
not.
into it.
Yeah.
They don't do it?
So HUD has a great system that
They're not-
Cynthia can tap into, but we cannot.
The
But because
nonprofits-
we're partnered, we can benefit from that
Get some
information.
information. Well, we'd have to create our own, but I have a feeling that our CAT RMS probably has some database that we could track it, or a Google Docs for that matter, that we could do that.
I was just gonna say the nonprofits access it because they receive HUD funding and it's part of the compliance.
Well, let's put a little more detail into, our quality of life strategic effort. It's a work plan. It's a subset of making sure that we're focusing on that. Are there other things in public safety that we could be doing that would enhance our efforts?
City manager, if I can, I have to ask if the chief could go back and Jason go back and come back to us with and fire on what do they need from us. They're the experts of what's going on out there. So
It's a great, and I interrupt you. It's a great segue, because what you see in this list, and again, I've sent it to you, but you may want to chew on it some more. This list is from them. Doesn't mean it's all inclusive. There are many other things that we could do or are doing, but we didn't think maybe rose to a specific action item. But that is the recommendation here. If we do some of these things, we will improve our capacity in the area of public safety. I think the one thing, and maybe just a quick, Rob, I don't know if you have a mic next to you, but we aren't talking too much about finances right now, but I think it is important to understand our operational revenue, our innies and our outies. Because when we do talk about additional staff, if we don't have additional revenue, what's your best estimate? Again, I think the council's aware of this, but it's a good reminder. On an operational basis, how are we doing with what we're spending on operations and what we're bringing in on revenues that are recurring?
Seems like a long time ago, we talked about the budget, but we're not quite halfway through this fiscal year. So we kind of got lost in the concept of all this one-time money that's coming in. And I think we forgot the fact that, you know, we're leaning heavily now into Measure X for this year and last to cover ongoing operational costs. And I would suspect, based on some preliminary information, that will be $2 to $3 million on operational costs. And those aren't specifically defined because Measure X was used as a gap stopper. But if we want to be able to purchase some of these things, we honestly, we're going to have to reprioritize a little bit because we've been adding 4 to 5 officers every year. That's part of it. And some other things that we've been adding on. So yeah, we're going to have to focus our priorities specifically on the ongoing operational pieces. Where we really have a lot of flexibility is just one-time money. We have a lot of Measure X money saved, one-time money from prior years that we didn't spend, probably $15 to $20 million. We've got $20 million in one-time money from ARPA funds. So really, if we can focus on the one-time strategies, I think we have a lot more flexibility there than focusing on the priorities of operational needs, because that's going to be a really a decision discussion, as you brought up earlier, about traffic or quality of life. So I almost feel like we have 2 different discussions. One's easier to have about the one-time needs, and then the operational needs are going to be a more difficult conversation. Well, the sooner that we can fine tune our operational needs, we could be out next year.
We're going to have to discipline ourselves. Well, I do know from 2017, 18 to today, we added something like 27 positions. So the way to stop the bleeding is to quit adding positions until we know we have the revenue to cover them. So there is that we need to address. I only wanted, and I appreciate that, Rob, because I think as we start getting into our next meeting and we start pricing these operational issues out, you're going to have some tough decisions, because it's not the one time we're talking about. It may actually be, if we lose the mental health grant and the county doesn't step in and we need to cover annually a few $100,000, do we have to drop that program because we just frankly don't have the money? Or do we cut another city department like Tim's? And I'll use Jason, our code enforcement team. We're presenting to you, as you know, we're coming forward with a fee resolution. If the fees are substantial enough, we're able to then offset the cost of additional staff by the new revenue. Example, when I arrived, I was a little puzzled on how we price our planning and building permit applications. There's an incentive there, but we aren't recovering our costs. And so it's a true, we're already structurally deficited by how we structured our revenue source. So if we want to add 4 or 5 code enforcement officers, but we only want to raise the fee to cover 2, we just created a deeper structural deficit. So those are the tough decisions. And as your city manager, as you hired me I will give you the unvarnished truth, not that you haven't heard it before, and we'll have to discipline ourselves. So that is our next step as we go through these and price these. If there are operational costs, just know if we're adding an operational cost, we better find an offsetting reduction somewhere, or we're just digging a deeper deeper hole. But I apologize, and public safety is our most critical, but are there some other things, I just mentioned the STR, you've been going through that, the code enforcement team, increasing the enforcement pursuant to the new ordinance as you consider it again tomorrow will be critical. Finding the revenues to produce the staff that's needed for that enforcement. Anything else that comes to mind in law enforcement? We've got our fire team here. You'll see some specific items, as Wayman indicated, that they have chimed in on. We need to continue to upgrade our equipment, our vehicles, our ambulances. We're fortunate to have a full-time emergency operations coordinator that helps us on that front. But if not, we could probably move on to the next topic, knowing that there still is room for discussion. We want to add more revenues to our flow to help with that structural deficit and provide more services. Economic development is one of those areas. So someone's got to help me. I'm left-handed. I think it takes a PhD to get that off. How are we doing on our economic development growth? Not just the retail growth, which is critical because of the sales tax, but our job producing. I think it just tears off, but let me.
As city manager, before we move on, I just want to say and echo some of the comments earlier. I want to thank the chief and our fire and our code enforcement for what they do. The things that we're talking about, we're really picking at some things, but overall, our services are excellent in the city of Indio. And I want to thank you. And if we have staff and crew members watching this, thank them for the work they do, especially these last couple of years during this pandemic, for being out on the front lines, dealing with these folks, knowing that this invisible illness was out there, so just thank you. Excuse me.
It's time to roll. So how do we attract, retain businesses, encouraging quality retail, facilitating the jobs, the career producing industries to Indio? This is an example where we think that we need to bring back to you a specific work plan. I've gone back and read some from some previous years. They're fairly 30,000 foot level views, but that's one suggestion here. There's some goals set here in some of these suggested items related to outreaching, for example, to our highest generators of retail sales tax. So we're communicating with them what's going well, how can we assist, how can we help you expand. Some of the best economic development is with existing businesses to help them grow rather than just trying to always attract. So that's the retention effort. But again, not hurting anyone's feelings if we had, and Carl and Kevin might want to chime in, but what are some things we can do to help improve our efforts on economic development? Some tasks.
Power. I would like to suggest that the more that our light industrial, when Cat Power moved in, that provided at the time up to 150 jobs and perhaps even more. And those jobs were at every level, from administrative to sales to technical to, it really was every level. And there was an opportunity to grow in that not so little company. And our ability to attract light industrial allows for more opportunity for jobs, for technical training, for education. But in order to get some of that light industrial, we all know we need to find a way to get some power in. And I just feel, sitting on the IID board, and I know Glenn, you do as well, until we bite the bullet or find a way to bring power to our community, economic development is going to be very difficult.
Yeah, and Carl might want to speak to this, the Majestic example. I think if they full build out, that could be 2,000 or 3,000 jobs potentially with all that acreage. And they are being asked to install a substation of $18 to $20 million, which they probably need $4 or $5 million worth of.
Yeah, so is the mic on?
Yes.
So as all of you know, we have some power issues in our city with respect to infrastructure from IID. Kevin and I have encountered, along with Brian, several examples in our city where you see on Indio Boulevard, majestic industrial park coming along Indio Boulevard on a 17-acre site, and then across the street next to Shandy's project in Northgate, there's another 40-acre site that they're looking at doing a project, but they can't get power to it. So we've been helping facilitate and smooth that with our IID folks. We also have an issue up in North India with all the large projects that are coming online with the larger residential projects. But also, as many of the council members know, we're working with BH Properties, who's a large property owner up north of the 10 freeway, west of Monroe. They have now tied up an additional 60 acres adding to their 100, and we're helping facilitate a zone change up there that will allow and facilitate fulfillment center, additional jobs, and development up in that area. So those are the kinds of things that I think we can do as a city staff, as a city team, to help facilitate and create more jobs and more opportunity in our community.
And this is going to sound sarcastic, and I don't mean it to. And because I guess I'm going to take a different direction. Is that happening? Is that moving the needle forward in a timely fashion? I guess what I'm getting to is, I don't want to be here 20 years from now as a resident, not a council member, and say, gosh, what happened to Majestic? What happened to that fulfillment center? Well, we couldn't get power. And so I guess my question then to the rest of my council is there a way to invest in power or to front that investment? And if there is, then what is the net gain by then bringing some of this business opportunity in? And does that make sense?
So what, wouldn't we be able to get those CFIs or whatever, what do you call those new things, on the undeveloped parcels, that community infrastructure bonds or whatever?
The old RDA replacement
The
thing.
replacement thing.
Those
I
are,
mean,
it's
can't we
possible.
Get that and impose that on the undeveloped commercial lots who, well, it could be on all the lots that will benefit from it, future development.
I don't know if we've evaluated those in the past. You have to get concurrence from all of the taxing entities. So
We
it's
haven't.
it's a bear, but
I know that they've done it for down South Valley for Anthony Vineyards area for the project. I forget the name of it.
to explain what this is, so if we have this vacant property on the west side of Monroe, north of I-10, if we're able to get all the other taxing entities to agree, right now there's there's no vertical development, so there's no tax increase. But if we can help them, if they would be convinced to give up some of the increment, if something goes vertical, we get that tax increment money that we can then borrow off of or provide an investment back in the community. So they get something, but right now it's zero. That's why they're willing to give up some of their revenue for us to put in some of that infrastructure. Could that help pay for a substation potentially?
Well, I would do it more than just the lot down in Monroe. I'd do it for the whole quadrant, because the more acreage,
The better deal it is.
The cost and the higher return on the increment.
Yeah, it's how RDA used to be, and it's something to explore. I think there's an option there. The mayor's point about investing in substations. In fact, I need to update Carl and Kevin on a conversation I just had before this meeting with IED, but their baby steps towards helping economic development is merely Majestic. You need to spend that $20 million for your substation, but we'll let you get reimbursed over time. Right now, they want to put a limit of 7 years, which means that anyone else that wants to tie into that substation is going to wait 7 years and 1 day, so they don't have to reimburse. It's not smart.
We did that for PGA West and for all of La Quinta, actually, to develop. We did it with CBWD and IID, but we did it over a 20-year period.
Yeah, it needs to be at least 20 years, I think, but those are some issues. We also, because there's such a lead time, my conversation today with them was, can we upfront, you have to buy these transformers in advance, it takes you a year and a half. Do we need to just put down some money so you can get these things ordered?
It takes 3 years to get them.
It does. They're not just on Amazon and get them tomorrow.
You can also ask for legislation, special legislation.
I think if we don't get good leverage for the CVEC thing, the legislation on this matter is only, it's probably our best leverage, but that's a whole larger discussion. Wayne and I spoke to it today as well. That is a huge issue. And so is there a willingness if we had to upfront some of this one-time money? Because if they aren't willing, we would be the one reimbursed rather than Majestic. So we put the 10, 15 million down, they put their 5 down. We collect a development impact fee and hope development happens and we get reimbursed.
The way we did it in La Quinta is we got reimbursed at the current rate. So if we paid $200 per acre, we got reimbursed at the current rate, which went up to $2,000 per acre.
There should be an interest expense. So yeah, that way, see, if there was space right now, in fact, I think I've shared with the council, but if there was capacity, like the jail took capacity, the arena that's being built is in IAD territory. I asked the question, so what does the arena need to pay? What substation they, oh no, there's capacity there. So the arena is paying this much for substation capacity.
Well, is that IID or is that?
It is IAD. It slivers up unincorporated, yeah.
So path 42 is gonna be that one.
Yeah.
Well, we'd like to come back to you. Kevin and Carl have been meeting with the team as stated at IAD. We're going to need to come back with some idea if the CVEC is as a way to help focus. But this is our biggest impediment right now in economic development, rightly so, is the electricity. And that's a shame. Other efforts that we could, and there's a list here again that we don't need to go through specifically, but something come to mind that we aren't doing, that we should be doing? Something we
I
should
think
start?
those are the biggest challenges other than broadband.
Broadband is
Yeah.
certainly a part of that.
Right.
Did we learn anything today? Who sat in that meeting I missed? Oh, no, it's tomorrow. I'm sorry. There's CVAG is trying to coordinate some effort as they lay down their fiber for the signalization, coordination, synchronization. How much that helps all of us, I don't know. I mean, certainly the CD link comes through here, so that might be a way to lay some of that fiber or Highway 111. Great. The next one's the fun, not that all these are fun, but it gets back to some of what Rob was indicating. Now, whenever we, community infrastructure, whenever we build something, we have to have enough money to maintain it, but we do have one-time money available. In our next meeting, we want you to get back, we'll get back to prioritizing these projects. We have a good idea of your priorities. We won't be able to do them all. Teach me how to swear. Scott's been teaching me how to do that. Actually, it's Carl.
I'll come up and tear your next one off for you. Okay.
Thank you. That'll make up for it. So how about community infrastructure? Priorities, the bridges, Monroe, Jackson. We talked about the public safety campus, obviously. The opportunity we have with the financing and low interest rates with the public safety campus is an opportunity to consider some other community infrastructure, such as the City Hall Library, maybe a small upgrade at the clubhouse at the golf course. Maybe it doesn't look like we'll receive the grant for the Market Street Park project, but maybe we put a stretch of grass there for that community. Some of this could be worked into the financing. We're not sure that the substations, by the way, could be, because it wouldn't be our asset. So that's something we'll have to evaluate. What are the council's thought on some key infrastructure issues that we want to make sure that we include? Measure X right now is providing for the annual pavement management program. We're expanding it this year to kind of catch up for last year, but I think it's $4.5 million a year, Tim. That's our typical pavement management goal. He wants more, but $4.5 million's been every year we hit that. That was your commitment to help sell Measure X originally. And we've been living up to that commitment, but we need to keep it going. If we're not careful, if our structural deficit grows, we won't be able to make that commitment. What are your thoughts on community infrastructure at
think we need to look at, we talked about the library. I mean, the County of Riverside has helped Desert Hot Springs, Coachella. What is the county able to provide funding for some of the cities in the inner cities that aren't on the corners? They spend a lot of money. I think the library is an asset not only to us, it's run by the county. I think that the county needs to step up and give the city of Indio some of the opportunities. I think we need to look at the transportation center. If we're really going to start on the downtown, we need to look at what we're going to do with that building. The temporary shack, I guess what you want to call it, that we put there for Greyhound. Greyhound left for multiple reasons, but one of them was that we were going to provide them a state-of-the-art facility with amenities. We were going to partner with somebody that was going to come in and help with the restaurant, do the stuff, and that way we could get the train platform. I think we need to look at that if you really want to get the train and the economics going in that downtown area, and make sure that we are the stop that comes through on the last area. We're going to need to have our transportation center done. I know it's a lot of funding, and Rob talks about it. We got some other stuff. The golf course is another one. I mean, the golf course needs a community center up there. There's never going to be enough cash, but what's going to make a difference in the long run to bring economic growth in here? Is it the fiber optic and the other stuff? But I think the library is something that the county should really help with us on. I think a grant from them should be able to help us with it. They spent, I think, 15 or 5 million, one or the other, for Desert Hot Springs. Why Desert Hot Springs? What does Desert Hot Springs?
They have
Not that I have
nothing.
any problem with it, but what does Desert Hot Springs get a library, or the city of Coachella get a library?
Yeah,
And the city
we
of
don't.
Indio or
Yeah.
Palm Desert or somewhere else does it.
We need
How
to-
do they come up with that?
We
So
need
they
to
can help us
fight
with
for it. My initial discussion is just on that front, again, being new. The county right now in the back of their minds is the staff. When they gave us the building and the land for $1, they think they mostly met that commitment. Now, that doesn't mean the politicians can't redirect staff on that mindset, but that's where they're thinking, just so you know.
I'll give them the land back. They give me a library. We'll call it even.
Okay, there we go.
So
Well, the conversation was that we would have a private individual build the library and they would operate it,
Yes,
and it would be a leased. to the
and they
city.
would continue this long-term
Right.
lease. Exactly. That is our arrangement. And so whether they were the ones that cashed that in or not, we need to fight that battle.
So I think we need to look at opportunities that are going to make a difference. Obviously, we got the bridges, infrastructure, a lot of this is going to come on grants, but what now are we going to be able to do with the brightness of the future that we're looking at? Is it the transportation center? I think we need to, while the prices are low, we need to bond for what we feel we can actually utilize and spend that's going to be positive for it without handicapping Rob or Tim. That's going to be the key thing. I agree with you. IID is going to be one of the difficult parts of it. I think we need to go after IID on part of it. I know that we need power, but we're not in a power business. So why am I going to pay $15 million for a transportation or a transformer substation? That's their job. Just like us asking them to build the road for us so that they could get to their transformer. You know, it doesn't make any sense to me. So
They're the
I
ones
think
that
we
have
really
the
need to go
revenue.
after them, but I do understand it. Without the power, we aren't going to get anywhere. But library, transportation center, definitely roads. I mean, we've had that, but really prioritize the roads, because if we're going to get down to 4.5 million, we're going to have to look at what really is going to be the portion of it, and we can't keep throwing darts at it. It's got to be, this is it, and this is the way we're going to roll. Because if not, we're just going to keep. Hey, when we do have a great opportunity, we're just not going to have the funding to be able to do it. And the structural deficit, Rob's right. We got to clear it out. We've got to figure a way. It's got to be zero.
So I think that on the multimodal center, we've had more traction when we referred to it as transient oriented housing project. Because
And there's
there's no,
space, and there's space there for that.
there's space and there's money for that. There's no money for multimodal.
Right.
Yep, that's what I'm saying.
So,
Exactly.
I mean, that's something we could actively be going after because it's prime for that. It has been prime for that for 5 years at least, that the state and the feds have had money for that. It's not a big thing, but one thing that we still need to keep bugging IID about is that we need to take ownership of all the street lights.
Yes.
Yes.
300%.
And I don't know why they keep putting us off. I've been trying for so long.
Yep, I agree. Absolutely.
Yep.
We have about half of them now, something like that.
Yeah, Tim has an inventory. You have an inventory.
Yeah, I did learn though, whoever told me, maybe it was you, that usually when you go to LED, your annual or monthly tariff gets cut in half. Well, when we asked that, they adjusted their fee, and so now we're paying more than we did for the LED, which is used less power, so another IED conflict.
a long conversation.
That's so they can fund the public benefits fund.
Yeah, a little
I
frustrating.
think we need to have that conversation with them and also with the county. I think we're at a point now where we need to sit down with the county and talk about Highway 111. Highway 111, it's about time it needs to be repaired in front of the detention center. And, we have the San Gorgonio CV rail project that's still in tier 1. But what can we do? And this is long-term, Rob. What can we do to start getting ready for that? Maybe some improvements down there. We talked about the transportation center, doing something there. We have a lot of land over there, an opportunity to do something. I don't know what we could do cost effectively, but in preparation the next couple of years, to put that on the radar as well, because with transportation, it's going to be optimal to get folks into our community for our downtown area and our festivals. And that's what's going to bring us some revenue. We don't want to create more bills, but we do want to generate revenue, and we need to figure out how we could do that. And that's getting more people into our community and moving them to where they need to go to spend those dollars. And that Monroe Bridge project is going to be important, but until we get that Monroe Bridge project, if it's street lights and infrastructure on Monroe to the polo grounds, that's where we need to focus. And Highway 111, our public works staff and crew have been doing an excellent job with what they have. I mean, if you go downtown now and look at some of our parking lots, I mean, some of these things, it seems like we're happening overnight. We approve it one day and it's done. I mean, you go over to Spectrum, north of the freeway, some of these roads, a couple of nights, they're done. And I think the community has to really understand, as well as some of the roads need a little bit more attention than others. So you might see some of the roads getting work done to them, and that's in order to maintain what we already have, so we don't have to spend more money at a later time. And that's some of the good strategic plan that Tim has been doing. I mean, he could tell you the first time I heard about crack and seal, I was like, what are you talking about? And some slurries, and I didn't know nothing about it, but he's done an excellent job at doing that. So I think having those conversations with the county on what we need to do, especially that 111 and focusing on Monroe, I think that's going to be important on our workforce and getting people in and out of our community to spend dollars.
Who are we talking to at IID?
All the way
Everybody,
to the
yeah.
top, everybody.
The board?
Yep.
Yeah, at least 2 members.
Which ones?
Hanks and
Hamby
Hamby.
and the other guy is
Hanks and Hamby.
Hanks, yeah,
Powerhouse. Andy's a good guy.
yep.
The long-term guys, yeah.
The
Hanks.
others don't like this, so.
Yeah, it's, there's a lack of trust. I'm learning more and more. There's as much animosity for the Coachella Valley from the water district than the cities. The cities, it's not, the staff level discussions are very cordial. But when you throw CVWD's name out, there's like this blood that goes into their eyes. It's a scary.
It's red water.
Yeah, it's, and we don't even care about their frickin' water. It's their power. Exactly. I wanted to get back because I know that it potentially is a sensitive topic, but we know we have a 50-year-old building. The library is just a couple years newer than that. When we invite people to come in to spend $50 million and invest, when we want to have staff that's rowing at the same time and operational, it's not something I'm telling you that you don't know, but our facility is inadequate. It doesn't send the message that this is where I want to invest. I use an analogy, but if somebody dressed kind of frumpy, maybe they had clothes on that looked like they were a little disheveled and they were old.
Me on a weekday.
Okay, I'll take a picture, I'll use an example. And that is how we dressed to go to a business meeting with somebody that wanted to invest $50 million. And we show up and we look like that and we are functional like that. Our chances of being successful in that meeting go down. Doesn't mean we can't pull it off because we're really nice, even though we look frumpy. our facility is not adequate. There is an opportunity to do something here. Probably the library could be a part of it, particularly if there's going to be some funding. Is there support for us to evaluate that opportunity, particularly when we have a financing opportunity where we can jump in and perhaps at the same time at lower interest rates than they have been historically, build something?
The last time we got a bid, it was
Yeah.
like 100 and some.
I mean, yes, the building looks incredibly shabby when people walk in and we present ourselves. It sort of represents, you know, subconsciously how people do work. But the other part of it is poor staff. I mean, we ask so much of them and kind of don't give them all the tools to make it work. I mean, you need a building that functions at every level, from a technology perspective to office space perspective to air conditioning. Because I know in one office, you know, you need to come in your bathing suit, and another one, you need to put your coat on all in the same day. I mean, I think we need, at some level, not a Taj Mahal like Temecula. We need a building that's functional. I was actually out at the city of Paris on Saturday night, and I was surprised to see their city hall. I'm like, hey, that's nicer than ours. I think we need some of those tools to present ourselves well and to give staff the opportunity to work at their highest level, more so than they do even now.
To answer your question, we've given the green light before.
Yep.
It just, the numbers came back.
Way high. The estimates we have right now, Scott's been helping us on them, are probably between 28 and 35 million for what we've spec'd out. And I know it's a range, but it really depends on the finishes you're talking about and how Taj Mahalish it looks, or just a real functional office building that matches the investment that COD is planning downtown, for example. Well, I know with your permission, Mayor, it's probably a good time for a little break, and then we
Break,
could wrap up the next few.
And before,
Sorry,
Oh,
I do
Oscar.
have a comment.
before that, what about Oscar? Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what was said, you know, especially with IID and the transportation center. One thing that I did want to mention on the park side, you know, I really think the collaboration with Desirect, it would make a huge difference for us, especially if we have them manage the community events at those parks and some sports leagues or something like that, and just put better use of our park spaces. And the other one that I wanted to add was the Miles Park improvements that we talked about during our budget session, of putting a skate park and possibly a dog park at Miles Park. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
So I think that will be our next meeting, not that we're finished yet today,
Yeah.
because we need another hour probably from you, but we'll bring back that one-time discussion, and you'll be able to look at these projects and kind of prioritize them based on the money that's available from a one-time basis. Because a lot of what we're talking about is operational, as Rob explained, but those one-time would include such things as a skate park or dog park.
We
And,
want
and,
more, yeah, more dog parks.
and I want to add as well, I don't want to get lost in transition. We do have that art piece. I don't know if it's in here. I didn't look, but we do have that 9/11 art piece to implement that somewhere in one of our parks, you know.
Park or the downtown campus. I mean, part of the downtown building, if I may interject, is it's not just a building, it's a campus
It's,
that invites the public, that has the veterans and the 9/11 piece, and gives people an opportunity, and for us to have functions and ceremonies and events. It's a functional and usable public space. I think that, to me, is as important as anything else in putting together a new city hall.
So we could have that as kind of an event space, those kind of ceremonial events. We did have the architect looked at the jagged piece of metal, and I think I sent you a few ideas, and unless we get it up in the air in a way, it's in such a jagged space that they're actually recommending something that Lupe mentioned.
Put it
is-
underground with glass.
Perhaps as you walk into City Hall inside of it, we could get that, they came up with that same idea, because it's so jagged, it's so difficult to,
It's mangled.
it's mangled, which has its own message that way,
Yeah.
because it came down as part of the project.
Maybe we put it with the time capsule.
There's an idea,
right next
time
to it,
capsule
little-
next to
little- right
the,
Next door to it.
down in
So-
the,
But I do agree on the parks, but you know, when you're looking at City Hall, I think you're gonna need to prioritize all these on which this is. I mean, when you start talking another 28 million, mean, how many roads is that? How many of the other stuff for City Hall? And I'm not saying we don't need it, but is it transportation gonna bring in? How can we partner with people like Desert Recreation District? And we do need to fix our parks. I agree with Oscar. Our parks are horrible and it just hasn't been invested in. But is there partners out there like the transportation center, like Lupe said, where we can use the housing and somebody will come in like Uber Eats, I'm just using for example, and will take the building as they use it as to move out with their Uber or whatever. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. There's got to be some things out there that we can look at that be creative. But when you add another $28 million, it's going to shred down what that Rob has. And then if we have a structural deficit, we're done. But we promised the residents when they reinvested in this at Measure E that we would invest that money in what would make the quality of their lives better. So whatever this is, got to be in that in mind, how it's going to help them.
Yeah, we'll have to address that. And, you know, the debt service on that 30 million is probably 1.5 million a year. So if it comes out of that flow, that we're hoping not as operational flow, but as capital flow, then
And with
it's
the car
manageable.
lots, I was just at the car dealership doing it. There's no cars. And that's one of our largest sources of income. So I think you're going to see a little downturn
We'll
in
see.
some of the tax dollars because
Mhm.
I mean, there were used cars there for
Yeah, they don't have
$40,000.
it's
inventory.
thin, it's
There's
thin.
no inventory. You
Yeah.
can't sell what you don't have.
Right.
That's
right.
our biggest source of
Yep.
income.
Yeah, no, it's something we have to watch for our sales tax. Well, if you want to take a snack or a drink or restrooms.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Are you good?
Yeah, that's the city hall. They said they want to replace it because it's icky, and the library also.
There are more efforts that can be done. Are there some other ideas of how we can help beautify the community? We talked a little bit about our facilities, our parks. Some of those are part of the infrastructure. What about other thoughts?
Well, I think, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No? You-
I think, part of it, is we've talked about it, and I've said this before, the city needs to lead by example. We have a lot of areas that need to be redone that I think, people keep telling me we can't use IWA. We pay our water bill like everybody else. I think we need to be able to utilize some of their services. Our light and landscape districts, I think we need to, even though those light and landscape districts some of them are cleaner, neater than others, they're old, they're not fresh, they're not crisp. So start beautification in certain areas for other people to be able to do things too. So some of the center areas, like right down here on the street in the old town area of Indio, we took out the grass, we put in stuff. Now, at first, we're a little objective to it, but now they like it. Now they walk down to the park on Miles and to lead by example and clean our stuff up. IWA is an opportunity, to get grants to the light and landscape districts are a way to do it. And then just investing in our community and doing the things that we need to do that we see, like around City Hall and that. If we're not going to work on City Hall right now, is there ways that we can turn it into a garden? Is there ways we can look at taking out some of the older plants and putting in some of the new drought tolerant plants and use it as an example to other things and make it shine in other ways and look at things that we need to do. Putting up trees that we're going to maintain that maybe don't shed. We've gone through different kinds of areas. And then some of it's just rock and hardscape where we're looking at some places. I know Tim's done a great job, but the fences along Highway 111, we put those up. They're all tattered and torn. We need to put them up. We need to look at things like that and keep consistent. It's nothing new. A lot of it is going to have to be contract labor when we do it, outside companies doing it that we But, if we set that plan and we start to do it and we do one neighborhood at a time, this and our community cleanups we've talked about, that will change and make a difference. And then how about these small time minor repair from the CBDG, has that even been used? Do people know that they can use that to help clean up the yards and do stuff? So I think there's a lot of great opportunities out there. We just haven't used them. And I think, like I said, the city by example, because the first thing for most people is you expect me to do this. You want a new sign for me, you want this, you want that. And your parking lots haven't been striped. Your flower beds look terrible. There's water running in the mediums that are going into the streets, but you want to come tell us that we need to do more. Let's lead by example. So, thank you.
Well said.
What, Glenn, you've made a very good point in reference IWA funds. Brian, we just haven't taken advantage of it. So that begs the question, is there a reason why we aren't using some of those IDWA? Are there issues or what prevents us from doing that?
And we can let Ray jump in while he's just getting the mic. Many utilities do a couple of things. One is a community benefit program where they're earning this money off the community, and so they give back on some community projects. The other is many utilities pay a franchise fee for the use of city rights of way and so forth. So if we have median on 42 by Home Depot that's just dirt, and we found out that actually to get water there is $27,000, maybe that's where IWA says, well, that's a community benefit grant. And that's kind of the idea you're talking about, unless Ray says that we can't, but.
Yeah, no, I'll speak to my past experience. When I was a chief engineer at the Upper San Gabriel, we had 17 cities underneath our wholesale jurisdiction. And we did have a demonstration garden program where we had each of the city halls, to the extent that we could, is come in, pull out the turf, and have what we thought was, and we actually got grant funding for this, was a way to share how conservation works. So we were able to bring in the desert-friendly plants, and it worked well because you're doing two things. Number one, saving water on that site. And number two is it's part of your outreach program as part of your conservation outreach program. One of the things we want to do now is, I'm working with Michelle, is to come up with a very similar concept here for the city, which hits right on what you just said, is how do we take the city as an example, and the justification, it's part of our conservation program, demonstration and outreach all in one specific area that the folks can see and use as an example in their own facilities. The other thing I'll talk about is real quickly is I was also part of a large landscape retrofit program. Sounds exactly what we're talking about now. And once again, we received funding for that with respect to taking the larger facilities, not necessarily removing all the turf, but removing sections of the turf and bringing California-friendly landscaping. And the thought is that it saved two things. Number one, water. And number two, because of the jurisdiction that we were in, we imported state water, which requires pumping. And in our case, there is a nexus on power. The less power that you pump from your wells, you're saving power, you're saving water. So again, another area that I plan to have, and we'll present tomorrow, in fact, as part of our long-range finance plan, is looking at those two opportunities that are right on spot with what Councilman Glenn just stated.
And there are resources we know in IWA for these type of things. I just thought of a novel idea, and it's related to what you're just talking about. I say novel because it's mine, but the idea is we need to upgrade irrigation because we have these different spray systems and so forth. But to do that, really to get the irrigation, and we have to rip out the old plants and we can replace them with desert plants. We get the new irrigation and the more water-friendly irrigation, and IWA funds that whole thing, just as a concept.
And I'm not talking about taking away from other opportunities like Carl's question.
Microphone, please.
Some of our meetings, but the second thing too is like entry programs to see the signs here. We talk about the smart public places, right?
Okay, for
Beautify those.
15
We
years.
talked that for 10 years.
Yeah.
We do all kinds of
Yeah.
different stage goes, we do nice landscape around it. I mean, that's all stuff that's there.
We don't do it. We don't pull the trigger. Yep.
Yeah.
It's just like I said, it's there. You just need to act it. whoever, Tim, Scott, whoever,
We
just do it. It's
just
done.
get, yeah, and I don't want to be critical because I'm new, because I've asked questions. I write like, well, why haven't we done this? Why haven't done that? Here's some of what I've heard, and it gets back to that rowing on the same page, on the same pace. The 9/11 monument. We spent probably $100 and something $1,000. We had model, but we could never get the oars in the water. And so that piece of metal for 20 years almost has been sitting. So sometimes you got to just yank and say, we're going to go do it. We don't have unanimity. There are 3 of you that say yes, we're going to go do it, and so help us as staff not be immobilized by the analysis and the disagreement. Once we hit, they taught me in city manager school to count to 3. And once we count to 3, 2 of you might be a little ticked off, but we got to get stuff done. Yeah, so just know that's, but if you're asking for it, when you get it and you're one of the 2, just know that's where we're headed. Every once in a while, we don't have unanimity and we can't just immobilize ourselves. We need to act.
Well,
Well, we got permission. Scott, you had a comment?
I was just going to add that we've actually utilized IWA funds for demonstration gardens for many years. We've been inside schools, and we actually are the ones that provided the seed money for Coachella Valley History Museum. So where that train depot and all that's going to be a demonstration garden, and that all came by way of IWA. So, well, actually, Gloria Franz was her kind of brainchild, but so we've done the demonstration gardens, and I think there's no reason why we can't do even larger ones
More.
and make it more prominent. Like, for example, here at City Hall.
Yeah, they're good models, Tim. Yeah, there may be just one example, because we need to know and educate the public. There was a basin that used to have turf that
Right.
people would play in. We did a turf conversion program, and now we don't have the play service anymore. Maybe the math is best for us. There's less maintenance now, but we took some grass away from a neighborhood. So just know there's some of those pros and cons to the
And that's
process.
exactly what I was going to say. I mean, as we go through this process, we all kind of get so focused on it, but yeah, I mean, those basins are playgrounds for kids in the neighborhood. So we have to be cognizant of that as well. It's always a happy medium.
Basins are one thing. I'm talking about individual board. We didn't finish stuff going on.
Yeah.
I'm talking
Right.
through the center, when we took out the art piece, but we let the
With-
steel stuff
yeah.
sit there.
Yep.
I mean, that, why couldn't I have put in something there? Or different, kind of, obviously, art was their center. Those are things things that make higher landscape along Indian Boulevard, where the railroad tracks are, where go to Coachella, they go. right
I know,
before
nice,
Oleander.
yeah.
Here you got all these dead plants every other area, and they say, well, we don't want homeless people. I felt down it once. You put the proper plants in, you get the proper irrigation. That's the stuff like that. Stuff that you see that you've got covered, 5%. Then we think it's normal.
This is good enough for India, which.
And yeah,
Yeah.
well, and 42.
We have to do the other two. Ray, Scott obviously worked with stuff, Tim does stuff, and did well, so I mean,
Hey, guys, please speak into the microphone. We can't hear online.
sorry.
I agree, and I'm gonna harp a little bit on Avenue 42. I mean, that is such a major corner in our city, 42 and Jackson. And my gosh, if we don't want to spend $27,000 on sprinklers and whatnot, then put not concrete, but the colored concrete that looks like brick or something,
The
do
rock.
something in there, because you got Home Depot, you got the golf course, I mean, you have all this stuff happening up there, and you have this dirt and a weed or two. And
And there
same
are
thing
few-
around the golf course. We now have the beautiful fencing, but I mean, gosh, that's our municipal golf course. That's the other thing I've been harping on. We've come a long way, but shouldn't it be pretty? From Avenue 42?
Some landscaping issues there. There's some vacant medians in Highway 111 as well. And some of them don't have water anymore. So this IWA concept of a community grant or franchise fee investment. Wayman, any ideas on beautification, or Oscar?
I think everything that we're talking about is all gonna go together. I mean, Councilmember Miller brought up some of our entries, and clearing some of those brushes out and in the encampments. Part of what we talked about already is addressing those encampments and getting those folks the services. And over on 42 and actually Monroe, as you go a little bit more north, some of those islands, not only could be changed, but they're a little bit dangerous coming out of Avenue 41 there, because you can't see down there. And I know we have a signal light that's going to be coming there shortly, but it's still kind of dangerous. You can't see down that way. And those are kind of things. So these things are going to work together, this beautification. And I think we're getting there. We're being innovative now. We're doing some things differently with our artwork. We have some art projects coming in. I mean, look at Carry-On Park, how far it's come. We have the Cacti project coming in downtown. These are going to change some of the demographics overnight. And I think we have to continue on that path, working on some art projects here at City Hall, making it a place, a destination where folks could come and say, hey, there's a 9/11 monument downtown at City Hall. However we do it, it's going to make it a destination for folks to come pay tribute there, or we pay tribute to some of our fallen soldiers that we recently lost, some things like that, some banners up down Indio Boulevard. How could we work on the beautification of Indio Boulevard and kind of changing it again? Not to say that we haven't done it in the past, but it's time to start doing it. I know when we put those banners up on 111, some of the new Indio banners, I mean, overnight I drove down there and I was like, whoa, this looks way different. And then you add the roads, the curbs, the sidewalks, some of the things that we've done. So we've come a long way. I think we just need to continue on that path. And I have to tip my hat off to our graffiti abatement team.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys are incredible. I tell you, I'm out first thing in the morning. I'm driving around the city and I'm looking at things, or if I'm getting off work at night, I'm driving around and I see graffiti and I go on the website, I take a picture, you upload it, and within 24 hours, it's gone. I mean, I was recently down over in Old North Indio, and I put something up one night and 7 o'clock in the morning, they were out there taking it down. So hats off to them. They're doing an excellent job, but that just shows that we have to get out there in the community a little bit more and really focus on our folks and tell them, hey, the city only could do so much. It's your community. You elected us to make decisions. So it's your community. You have to take care of it, whether we're working with our youth, whether it's social media, or we're getting down there having some of these resource fairs like we've had before, I think, which were very, very beneficial to let folks know the services that we have in our community. We have a lot of services. So when we've had the resource fairs down at Carry-On Park, folks come down and they see what the water district does, or the rebate program with IWA. So there's a lot of things that we could do. The community cleanups, that's a very good mechanism we use, not just to clean up, but to interact with the community. They come out and they start working, and it gives us a voice where we can start communicating. Look, what do you need from us? Whether it's more LED lights, or is it roads, or is it, just communication? Because I could tell you, if you go into the Terrace neighborhood, which we call the reservation or the res, I mean, overnight we did roads, we did LED lights, had a new park, and the community changed like that. And that was an excellent job by the city. And if you could go down there at night and drive through there, I could tell you 5 years ago, if you went through there, completely different. And I talked to Tim about this a while ago, it's just something when you work on infrastructure like that, the community sees it and they appreciate it and they take care of it. So I think we have to target. We have to look at our communities and say, what community needs attention right now? Is it down in South Indio? Okay, well, let's go to a park. Let's have a resource fair. We'll bring the public works in. We'll bring Burtech in, and we'll hit it all in one shot. And we could communicate with those folks. And we're getting engagement now. Folks are letting us know what they need. I get calls and text messages, direct messages. Hey, we got something going on over here. Can you come check this out? And sure, why not? And then I direct them to who I need to direct them to. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Chief. Tim, because they hear from me a lot. And sometimes I may not have the answer, but one of these gentlemen do. And so I appreciate them for that. But I think we're on the right path. I think that the community cleanups are very beneficial to the beautification, and it shows the community that we care. And in turn, they begin to take care of their communities.
Yeah, it's the reverse broken window theory.
And so something that has been driving me nuts for the last several years is a sign ordinance, a sign and banner ordinance. we go into other cities, people take their box signs or whatever their signs down and they have to paint. You can drive through any part of our city, old signs down, there's nothing up there, or there's a banner and the banner, and I know because as a small business owner, I've had to get permits, right? The banners are supposed to be up 45 days within a 90-day period. They're up for 2 or 3 years. Why? Are we doing signs or not? Why can't we make people, enforce the fact that if you move out, you've got to remove the sign or paint the facade above it? We look at windows, 1/3 of the windows is supposed to be covered, 2/3 open. Well, most people have black stuff on their windows. On the corner of Monroe and 111, there's a meat market behind Winchell's that has more junk on their windows. It's mind boggling. And then they don't even completely peel the old stuff off before they put new stuff on. I am frustrated by the lack of shabbiness that our cities look, because there's everything from banners and it just looks terrible.
And on the signage thing, Jason, it appears it's in there, but to update our sign ordinance is a
Yeah,
critical.
I think that's important. Also, there's a bullet point for enforceable property maintenance standards for commercial complexes. One of the things we're lacking is a consistent enforcement
Yeah.
across commercial complexes, because throughout the years, they've all been conditioned with different standards. So bringing that all into one sort of set of rules for all businesses to follow will be really beneficial.
I think that would be huge, and I appreciate it because I just see it. And I know Oscar has his hand raised, so I don't want to go on to the next subject without allowing Oscar to speak. Go right ahead, Oscar.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the suggestions I really like is the block walls. And I don't know who we would have to go through for some of the residential areas. I know on Clinton, starting on India Boulevard all the way to 111, there's a lot of block walls there that need some improvement. You could see the paint peeling off there and everything. So who do we have to go through to get permission to work on those walls?
It is complicated. Some of the walls, most of the walls are owned by the property owner or the HOA. So it's private property. We've had some recently, Mayor Pro Tem's talked about it, where these are folks that received insurance settlements, but it wasn't enough to complete the full reconstruction of the wall. So it's still left deconstructed. If we step in and do it, there is a cost we have to upfront. A good chance we'll get reimbursed the abatement process, but it just takes time. It'll be much more expensive if we do it.
It'll be much more expensive, but it actually gets the problem solved faster.
Yeah.
So a lot of what we're trying to do is solve the problems so that they will linger for months and years at a time.
Yeah, and some of the ones that I'm talking about is not necessarily the ones that have been, crashed into, but just old walls, with the paint peeling off and everything. And maybe we could work with, the high school arts program or something like that and get something going with them, or I don't know, work with some other organizations to get some art going on some of those walls. I think that'd be really nice. Another thing that I've actually talked to Bird Tech about this already, but getting some more awareness of some of their programs they have for, the bulky item pickups, so that people can start getting rid of some of the junk in their yards. I really like the suggestions from Councilmember Miller and from Ray as well on the, leading by example and start showing to people some of our projects and maybe also just showing them how much the costs are, right? So that people know how much do I need to save up if I am going to convert to the desert friendly landscaping. And, hopefully in some way we can start increase. I think they're going to bring those numbers to us for how many, what percentage of people in India have desert friendly landscaping. And so we can start seeing, how much do we really need to invest to start getting that up higher so we can start saving more water as well. On India Boulevard, I think one of the things we could do, because we are so limited financially, is opening that up to the cannabis businesses, right? I think those are some of the only people that are going to bring big investments to an area like that, right? So if we, have somebody able to open a dispensary there, but make a community development agreement that they have to, provide some kind of service to that area or some kind of improvement to that area. I think also for the hotels there, if we were to change the zoning there to enable cannabis friendly hotels, I think that could possibly bring some investment and renovations to those buildings there. As far as the arts, I think we still need to see the strategic plan from our arts commission. I know that's been waiting for a couple of months now, so I'm eager to see that one already. And as far the basins, somebody mentioned the basins, and I think that's a really important one, that we do leave those spaces for play areas, but also how can we improve them to be better used as play areas, right? I know in my old neighborhood, some of the stuff there, it looks pretty bad. You know, that one of those basins looks pretty bad, even though the kids do play there. And I know at one point in the other basin that we had in my neighborhood, we had 2 soccer goals, and they were used tremendously, right? They were used on a daily basis. And I think they were removed at some point because one of the neighbors had complaints or something like that. But if we could find some ways around that we could start using those a little bit better, or adding small amenities, right, that wouldn't be too expensive to those areas, would really help. We talked about the graffiti abatement. I agree. You know, our team does really well. I definitely reach out to them a lot, and it's taken care of by the next morning. So I really appreciate their work on that side of things. I think that's all I have for now. I don't know if anybody has any questions on any of those subjects.
Well, those are good. And some of them, like we have an arts and culture focus. Some of them might be, as we discuss cannabis and so forth, from an economic development standpoint.
Lupe has been raising her hand, and then we'll go to Glenn.
I just wanted to make a couple of comments. The city of La Quinta recently created artwork on a residential wall on the corner of Fred Waring and Adams. And I'm heading westbound. I would invite everyone to drive by and take a look at it. It created what used to be an ugly, peeling, old residential HOA wall into a beautiful mural. I think we can do things like that. But the place I really would like for us to focus on, I know we have a large city and we want to do things throughout the community, but if we don't take care of our entry points, if we don't put our best dress on at those points, it doesn't matter what we do in the city, because no one's going to go on to travel past an intersection that is poorly maintained. So our funds are limited and our staff resources are short. So I really would encourage everyone to really focus on the entry points and where we can put our best foot forward so that we can bring in those new investments and bring in those sales tax dollars into our city so we can have additional resources to invest community-wide. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I concur with Lupe on the 50 points. The other thing too is we took care of it downtown, our buildings and houses. We need to have a bigger presence of houses and take down, bring the thing down. There's one on Miles
Yeah.
Avenue, there's another one over off of that we talked about with that San Jose home. Fence around and burnt down for almost a year now, and in the settlement, there's got to be a way that we doesn't have to look at that somehow with the code enforcement. We took this one and put a lot of this to put it down. We were paying for it, but like the one Saturday home,
Mhm.
are we gonna allow that for the community? What can we do to either leveling it, taking it out, or getting circle? Because it's just not fair. It's unsafe.
Well, and it drops property values. There's one on Oasis that had a fence and it had the wrap, and the wrap has been removed, and now they're in there doing graffiti. I can't wait to see the next fire department blurb that says house on Oasis burned again. So that's worth to at least a couple more burns. And I'm not trying to be a smart aleck, but unfortunately, once that seems to happen, and it's unfortunate, it's a waste of resources, but for our guys and gals in the fire department, but there's got to be a way to work with the owners so that they continue to take care of that property after something like that has happened, and not just say, I throw a fence up at it and that's it.
I don't know if either Kevin or Jason wants to chime in, because I think that's a relevant matter. If we, from a policy perspective, if we give very brief notice and then we say we're going to jump in and abate, there's a legal process and some upfront costs. Most often we can recover those, but if that's a policy direction, we'd be much more aggressive. You'll get some pushback from some that, hey, I just had my house burned down and now you're jumping all over me. I haven't got my insurance settlement yet, for example. But Jason, you might help.
Yeah, that's what we're going in when we're trying to solve these problems faster with abatements. Abatements allow us to go in with a relatively short time frame, go in and abate the nuisance, knock down the house, and we can recover the costs on the end of that. So it's sort of flipping what we normally do in code enforcement around and actually solving the problem and then going after cost reimbursement. But there's upfront cost with that. A typical demolitions, $35,000, which we can do, we can fund, but it just takes, that's the policy decision.
That's a
of council.
policy.
Yeah.
And my question is, because these abandoned places tend to burn 2 or 3 times, I mean, how much does that cost?
We need to quit putting them out. So let them burn to the ground. He's not listening.
Yeah, we've all. I mean, and so I think there's a message there for us as council members, is this a policy decision that we want to consider, which is, a very aggressive approach to abatement rather than letting these properties, homes, commercial properties, whatever, sit there and create greater problems, because there's squatters, drugs, graffiti, and illegal activity going on in these places. So I think staff needs our direction as to how aggressive we might want to be.
Could I weigh in? So in another community I worked in, we got extremely aggressive. We actually forced sales of property. When the property owner was not acting, we forced sales and got other parties to come in and rehab them and make them positive members of the community.
Like
So
a receivership type thing, or?
we put them under extreme code enforcement lenses. We went after them in the court system. If they weren't being good after, the point that Jason's made, we gave them a very narrow window of compliance. And then we went after them and we forced sales. And we found that the court system, at least that particular area, was very open to that, because we demonstrated, we checked all the proverbial boxes legally. But so it's a comfort, it's a policy decision, as the council members are saying, but you can push very actively and hard, but there are costs, as Jason's saying and Brian's saying.
Well, then let me throw this out to my fellow council members. What do y'all think of that?
I'm for it, and I think we should. And then if the people don't want to rebuild their home, then the city should be able to recoup that cost and then turn it into affordable housing. Get somebody else to build a house in there that wants to be able to build it, do affordable housing on it. But I think we get them out of there. The ones that I've seen have been burnt for
a long time,
years, and it's just not fair to that community.
I do support that. And that's a good point with affordable housing. I think working with some of our partners, maybe Habitat of Humanity or a nonprofit like that could come in and work with the city and say, hey, we're going after this bad actor. If we get this property, is this something you might want to be interested in, come and building and getting a family in this home? We do have a lot of older structures here in our city, especially downtown area, and Oasis and some of these properties that recently burned. And it's unfortunate, but yes, some of the owners may not be financially capable of maintaining their properties anymore. And maybe we do need to come in and do that. So Roxanne's not here right now, but that's something I think that we can entertain.
I think she's on. Oscar and Lupe, what are your thoughts?
I would support it. We used to be that tough when we had our city prosecutor, because I know of a few burnt homes that were forced to clean them up or under threat of city foreclosure. But another tool that we can use is the recently adopted general plan. If any of these properties, not necessarily burnt properties, but properties that are abandoned, boarded up, not being taken care of, put into work and a compliance kind of date, that if they don't conform to the general plan by a certain date, then there will be consequences. The city of La Quinta did it when they passed their general plan, that if the properties did not come into conformance with the general plan, that there were would be fines and subsequent legal action. So there's various tools we can take if we're willing to be that aggressive. I'm supportive of either one, as long as we give the property owner ample time to remedy the situation before we get too aggressive.
Oscar?
Yeah, I agree as well. I think, just in those cases that we talked about where, maybe it's a family whose home burned down and they're waiting for the insurance claims. I just think that we should find a way to be compassionate in that sense, right? As well, right? So, if, like Glenn's saying, if we're going to build affordable housing, can we prioritize that for the family, right? Or find them housing elsewhere. I just don't want to group everybody in one subject, right? So I just want to make sure that if we do have families who are going through some tough times, that we are compassionate in that sense. But I do agree generally with the idea.
The only other thing, and this is extreme, and I recognize it when I say it, but in that same community, for those really bad actors, we created on our website, we called it the Wall of Shame, and we highlighted these bad actors. We publicly shamed them, and that contributed to some of them wanting to not be bad actors in that city anymore. I'm not advocating for that, but that was how aggressive we were, that we felt that they needed to be called out in the public forum.
I think related to that, maybe something Wayman said, I wrote down before and after photos. There have been great examples where we step in and we encourage people to comply, and we could show what it looked like when we first gave the notice of violation, and then when it's done, and we can tell a cool story. So it can turn positive as well. Now, we may not put the address on it, but there's this piece of, junk looking property, and all of a sudden now it's beautified. We need to tell that story more often.
But I mean, even we have this building here in Oasis with that empty lot right across from Sherman's and Adiola's. I mean, that building's been there and it's just sitting there. Like, how could we go after someone like that who, I believe they just put a fence around it, and it's been sitting there.
It's because it's owned by College of the Desert.
Do they own that?
Yep.
Jeez.
And they do not take care of their property.
Wow.
There are laws and ordinances out there that a lot of cities have, and we have something similar to our vacant property registration program that was very successful during the foreclosure crisis, and they've expanded to all commercial buildings. So in a lot of cities, what they do is if you own a vacant commercial structure, you're required to get a permit, you have to have a plan to maintain it, so there's options there we can look at as well.
Okay.
Well, we do have a very comprehensive list, including some Jason referred to under this item. And as we bring this back to you and we kind of price it out, this more aggressive abatements needs to be one of them. We probably need to add some money to our abatement fund. We eventually would be reimbursed. Now, I'm not sure how often, unless there's a receivership, that we ever control the property completely, but we have a lien that could be leveraged.
Yeah, and for these types of liens for abatements, we can do a tax lien as well. So we get reimbursed every quarter from the county, or every twice a year from the county.
The teeter stuff.
Yeah.
So, well, the next item, again, we've talked so much about this perhaps in the council meetings and so forth, but the downtown Highway 111 are kind of our key commercial corridors. The downtown, talking about dressing up our city-owned buildings, having events, activating the spaces, having a downtown living room park, a facade improvement program. I know that Carl's team's got the draft that you've seen once ready to come back to you for more final approval. There's some others that we have on the list, but what are some other things we can do that maybe we haven't discussed to help improve the downtown, for example, or the Highway 111 corridor?
I think I'm going to go back and suggest some level of signage. We talk about a wayfinding program, particularly on Highway 111, and and when things start picking up a little bit in the downtown area, just leading or guiding people to certain areas. I mean, and I don't support a sign on every block, but maybe there's some carefully placed signs that lead people to places, whether it's a park or it's a museum, or it's the downtown, or it's College of the whatever it is, some carefully placed, nice signage, entryways, and off Highway 111 in particular that lead people or lets what district or what area you might be in.
Yeah, I know Tim's team found a real attractive wayfinding system that we can put our new colors and logo on that could guide people throughout even to schools. So you're driving down Highway 111, where's Jefferson School? And we have a little arrow and a nice signage, guides people to downtown, to City Hall, to the library, so forth. So we do have that on the list. It's an important part of it. Other ideas for the downtown that we maybe haven't discussed? I'm just skimming through.
Yeah, I'll just share something. A while ago, we took a trip over to Chandler, Arizona, and we're down in their area. They had this little roadway, just some colorful lights where some of their folks would pull in with their cars and take pictures. And it was called Hearn Street. And if you look it up in Chandler, Arizona, Hearn Street, and it was just a small little concept where they could pull in and there's lights above in this little strip, and it just magnified it a little different at night, and it gave the folks a reason to come down here, or down there, I should say. And that's one of those things I think with downtown. I think we're doing with the living room, the art project, and some of the beautification. I think it's going to bring folks down here. We have some business owners coming down here getting ready to develop and some of our businesses. So I think as we continue on this path that we're going, I think we're moving in the right direction. I don't want to pivot and change right away. I think we're doing something good right now. We also have the CV History Museum that's down there, which is actually, great if folks get down there and see what's there. So as we begin to tie these things in downtown, I think we're on the right path. Now, we talking about downtown Highway 111, I think we need to really think about College of the Desert as well, and parking and some of our structures here downtown. What are we going to do for parking? We have the college coming in, the expansion. How is that going to blend into what we're already doing? We don't want to have this nice, beautiful campus and then come across the street to City Hall and it's completely different. How could we tie in College of the Desert, City Hall, downtown, or just I say miles, and then we have town and Oasis? So we have the opportunity to do something really great here. And I think we're on the right path. These are good items on the list. And I don't think we should pivot off too much. I think we made some great policy decisions the last couple of years and now I think now we're going to see these things through. That makes any sense,
It certainly does. Yeah, creating some sort of reason to come down, the events, this destination lighting or some other component. Those are huge.
And walk paths. Somebody did a plan, not been that long, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So I had the deli. So what is that, about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and put together sort of this walk path. I'm going to throw it out. It was like a spirit walk path, which was kind of a cool concept, but it just connected things in the city. I mean, it wasn't any drastic changes or hugely expensive things, but it created pathways through the use of lights or through other things, or painted sidewalks or something that just kind of connects the greater downtown community, because otherwise the downtown can be disconnected as well. If you look at some other communities, some work well, and how are they connected versus others that just go, I go here and I get in my car, or I go there, and then the rest of it is all disconnected. So something that creates at not a huge cost, that sense of, well, I want to walk to the next block, or what, I wonder what's down there. And there's some sort of guiding. Again, lights are my favorite thing, that allow people to take that walk or journey.
Yeah, I think it was spoke about earlier, some of the districts and maybe the street signs and, some of the areas down south, some of their stop signs that have lights on them. But I want folks to know when they're in downtown Indio. I don't want it to be downtown Indio. Oh, go downtown to the police department. No, that's not what we want to be known as. I want folks to know, hey, we're in downtown Indio. Here's the college. If you keep going, here's some food. Here's, a coffee shop. Here's, PJs. And so we want folks to know when they're here, and let's give them a reason to be here. Let's give these students somewhere to sit down and eat and go have a picnic down at the living room, or have some entertainment, have some dive bars, whatever it's going to be, to liven it up, as well as in the daytime. How could we make it a destination in the daytime, right? We have a large senior population. I would love to come down in the mornings on the weekends and have something going on for our senior population or our youth, and open it up. We're talking about strengthening our relationship with the recreation district and some of the school districts. Hey, let's come down here. Let's put some art projects from our students so their parents could bring them down to see them. We had, I want to say when the students were down for the last thing, they're all the kids from all over the valley were down here downtown Indio, and we had some food trucks and things down there. But myself and the mayor, we were looking around. It's like, wow, this is a real big opportunity to do something on a larger scale while we have these students here. So the second Saturday event downtown, I think that's going to be big. And but I think we're on the right path. We're doing some great things. We talked about being innovative on getting some of these buildings demolished. Those buildings have been there for a long time. They've been there for years. Well, they're gone now, and that gives us another opportunity to build something or have somebody come in and build something. So we're moving pretty fast. We're moving pretty
And
fast.
for those empty pieces of property, there's pop-up, whether it's pop-up art or pop-up food or pop-up whatever to be able to, and that may be something the Arts Commission or can work on, right? But how do we get that something? There's a lot of open space. And until these things, actually get built, until dirt starts flying, the ability to,
Well, maybe the cacti is an example. We have the paisleys that we joke about, where maybe they have to be moved once development
Yeah.
comes in. Where the cacti are going, I'm not sure it'll ever be developed. But there are other areas you're just stating, while we're waiting, why not make them look nicer?
right, absolutely. And Oscar raised his hand.
Yeah, I think I like the ideas of the walk paths. And I think one important one would be connecting Miles Park to the downtown, right?
Yeah.
So that when people can go eat at the restaurants, bring their family to the park. But I think with that comes along the amenities that we talked about with Miles Park, right? And also, I just talked to the city manager as well about the lighting. I know some days we had lighting at night for the Miles Park, but some days we don't. So we need to get that straightened out and see what the costs are first, but also, what do we really want to do there? But I think, that lighting at night will bring more traffic through the downtown later on in the evenings so that we can keep businesses going a little later on at night. Another area that needs a little bit of attention is that area there on Miles and Declet Nor. I know that parking lot definitely needs to be, needs some improvements there, and those sidewalks around that area, around the mini mart there as well, need some work. So I think tying those areas into the downtown property is going to be really important. But I do like the ideas about the walk paths, and also, I do think we're on the right path, and our staff's been doing a great job of bringing some new businesses in and moving downtown forward. So I appreciate all the work there. Thank you.
Maybe a linear park from the college down to City Hall.
How
Yeah,
about
the
directional
trail.
signs on the sidewalk, artwork on the sidewalk?
Yeah.
One of the sketches I think Holt has come up with, they actually did this back in 2018, by the way, but it was to connect this plaza environment from a new city hall that would take it all the way north up to the living room park.
Mm.
So that
Yeah.
is, we own all that property. It's the alleyway, but we could guide people there.
Mhm.
I mean, I think we have to be innovative and let staff use their imagination and bring things that they're capable of doing. And I mean, recently I seen something on the internet where a city, I don't know what city it was, maybe say downtown, they just took some paint and painted a hopscotch on the sidewalk. And you would be amazed how many people brought their kids down there just to go down that sidewalk and do hopscotch. So some of these things that we could do to improve it, to save dollars. I mean, we could do things like that. So.
And we go back to engaging our kids, engaging our teen center. I mean, the tremendous artistic and musical sense of the youth in our community is off the charts, and to be able to access them. Tom Buck is my guy on the Arts Commission. He doesn't work at Indio High School, but whoever his replacement was, as well as the teen center, just to be able to engage and get some of these creative juices going. And I don't think there's a huge cost to this. I mean, I don't think this is something that costs millions of dollars.
No, the activation of these spaces, something like hopscotch or photos of the murals we've talked about, maybe that's the next topic too. Bring people down for just photos.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's that easy to activate at times. Well, I know we have got some food here and we're getting close and maybe as Wayman stated, I know you've placed a lot of trust in us and a lot of the items are here and we haven't gone through all of them in detail. And there are a couple of other areas we could catch up on either via email or during a regular council meeting. But the next one talks about arts and culture. We've made a little bit of a transition, as you know, moving the arts function out of community development, moving it over to Scott and the city manager's office, new staffing there. So there's some new opportunities as you might have ideas. And we talk about activating some of the downtown spaces with art, the entryways. Funds aren't huge there, but we have some available and there's some recurring money that comes in to be able to put artwork, particularly at the entries. So Mayor, your call, we could eat and talk a little bit more, or we could wrap up and pick up these at another time. What?
I think we should, let's grab some pizza and come back and continue the conversation. I mean, we don't often have a group like this. I know it's 10 to 7, but maybe 10 or 15 minutes worth of
Okay,
conversation.
perfect.
If everybody agrees, everybody's okay with that. And if not, then
Yeah, I think 6 is real important.
how we can advance the arts and so forth. But again, I think the key question is what more can we do in this area to enhance the arts and culture events of the community? Any thoughts on beyond what might be on that draft? No takers? Arts, culture, events.
I think we have a good start, my opinion, as we activate the area and the downtown. Things will naturally, I mean, we're creating some of the structure, and I think some of that will organically happen as well, because all the things that we've talked about, engaging the Arts Commission, engaging our students, doing things like that, and having people in the area and having restaurants and so on and so forth, activating, then there'll be that mass of people that will be there that will want more. And I think there's some level of organic growth that will occur, I believe.
They're meaningful in some of these events. Something if we wanted to add, for example, a Veterans Day event downtown or a Memorial Day event, aren't a real huge cost. There's some staff issue there that we need to evaluate, but it creates again that sense of a community and gathering, sense of place. I mentioned the arts, kind of a transition of how we're approaching the arts with new staff and arrangement. If there are any comment, Glenn, you have some ideas or?
No, I think we got a good start. I think we need to invest more in our people that we have here already. Obviously, Kevin's done a great stuff. We're doing the bridge. He tells me the fabrication for the art that's going on the bridge in Miles is being done. I think our entry points, I think we have a lot on our plate. I think it's just following through on what we need to do and then partnering with like the IPAC and the Performing Arts Center that's going really well there. I think it's a really small secret that people don't see, just like our history museum. We have great opportunities, I think, to be able to highlight Indio and some of the great issues and things that we have here going on are not seen by a lot of the people because they're not able to come into this. I mean, they hear for us for the concerts, but there's so much more going on. How do we invest in that? Some murals, some other stuff. I think we have some great tools. I think we just need to put it in motion. So I think there's some partnerships with Golden Voice like we just had that we probably should have taken care of a long time ago. But we also have our youth. We have some of these young artists that are murals artists throughout, the Coachella Valley and excuse me, Councilmember Amit was talking about that they did. I drive by it quite a bit on Miles Avenue there in La Quinta. And I think there's some great opportunities to be able to do some great artwork on Fred Waring and some of the other areas going through on some of these walls that I think the community would appreciate. Especially on some of the corners. So I think we got great tools and bones. I think we just need to keep going forward.
Yeah, we have some long stretches. I think Oscar referred to it, but Clinton, Monroe, Wayne's mentioned Monroe heading south.
So you know where I'm going.
Just blank walls. Now, I'm jumping in. It's not quite art. Maybe it's back to beautification, but Fred Waring, as you enter into Palm Desert, Portola in that area, they've actually have different color CMU blocks, and it just creates a design. We could paint that into these walls or a mural that would at least break it up, whether it's artwork or not.
I really want to focus on our 2022 festivals. This is going to bring us back. This is going to generate some revenue. And how can we capitalize on that? How could we capitalize on the folks that are going to be here? Now, we've done a great job with some of the art projects that were at the music festival. So when it's season and folks are here, they're going to be downtown at the Cacti taking pictures. They're going to be over at the Carry On Park taking pictures. And how can we capitalize on those folks? They need to eat, they need to get gas, they need to sleep over. And even with our short-term rentals, I mean, we passed the ordinance on that. I think that's going to be great moving forward for us here. But I think we're the city of festivals. So how can we capitalize that? I see on here getting some more merchandise, some City of Indio merchandise. I think that'd be great too, because it is the Coachella Valley Music and Arts Festival, but it's in the city of Indio. So when folks get off those freeways, I want them to know they're in Indio, and I want those folks coming down Monroe I like to see that brick wall, and I've talked about it before. Some more artwork there, maybe some pop culture. So when folks are on their way down there, they know where they're going. They were going to the festivals, and that's why that Highway 111 and Monroe interchange is going to be important. Maybe some kind of structure there. You talked about that, but we've done a great job getting some of those projects in our community.
Yeah, when we speak of entryways, that does include the I-10 connections, right? Is
Yeah.
that assumed? Okay.
And so 2 thoughts, if I may. One is we need to create a portable something that says Coachella or Stagecoach, Indio, California, where people can take a picture. I mean, we talk about angel wings or whatever that is. We are missing the boat if we don't have something, and we can put it on the public works, whatever trailer, it's a backdrop or what, until we get permanent, or maybe it's pop-up and it changes where people can take that photo, number one. Number two, by 2022, we really need to get those awful utility boxes stripped, fixed, something. And the third thing to think about with these concerts, as we talk about entry points and we talk about Monroe and everything else, keep in mind that the way these concerts are set up, everybody gets bussed out of Indio, right? So big challenge there, because everything goes to Indian Wells, everybody's bussed. So that traffic that used to route, that drove people nuts, so that was, down Jefferson, down Monroe, down, all those areas. Now we've created a Golden Voice, listen to us and complain about traffic. And so now they put everybody on a bus, and people go to the Indian Wells Tennis Garden, they leave their cars there, they get on a bus, and that's it. And that's a bigger, more broad, but we need to have that conversation, because somehow or other, we're missing out. Our businesses, our restaurants are missing out on business. Stater Brothers, from Stater Brothers to Mexicali, they're all missing out on business because everybody goes to Indian Wells, gets on a bus and gets bussed into the concerts, and nothing else happens.
But what city manager just circled, the partnership with Golden Voice. I think as we move forward with Golden Voice, I tell you this, if we partnered with Golden Voice a little bit, I mean, we partnered with them, but we have some conversations. So we have the downtown living room, and they brought an artist here, or one of the teenage pop stars, to come do a couple events downtown. That's going to bring a lot of parents down here with a lot of kids to see that, whatever artist that is. And I think those are some of the ways that we could capture some of the folks from the festivals. I mean, there's going to be so many people here, so many artists, and Golden Voice has the connections to get somebody downtown. If we have an amphitheater downtown, hey, we got this artist coming down here. They're going to be here on Saturday at noon. It'd be flooded down here with people. And I mean, of course, the chief had to get ready for that. But I think that's just another way of capitalizing and bringing people downtown during our festival season.
Yeah, and before you chat, I have talked to staff about, because I'm new to the festival, how can we draw these people in? And there's some ramifications. I don't know if we have a clear answer. That's one of the best ones I've thought of, is if we can convince Golden Voice to have one of their warm-up bands come down here off time or right after Coachella, that could help.
I'm gonna ask the real dumb question I just asked Glenn. He was gracious enough to answer. So I'm not long-term either in the city, but why don't we go back to Golden Voice and say, don't send them to Indian Wells? We have 90 acres of county facilities right near us with gobs of parking opportunity. Run your shuttle service out of there.
At the fairgrounds?
Yes, at the county fairgrounds.
I think part of it is because there's such a blockage trying to make it over the Monroe Bridge and the Jackson Bridge, but there is an answer for some of it.
Yeah.
You're right.
Well, this would be down Highway 111. so
Or
the-
we have the BH properties, 200 acres. They're not going to develop. I'm just saying, my point is
Right.
that why don't we ask them, invite them back into our city and capture those eyes and purchases that we're talking about?
And so I couldn't agree more. And who approves? I think Rob, maybe be able to answer this. Who approves the plans for the shuttles? I mean, the city of Indio obviously has to have, maybe the chief knows, a role in all of this. And we were early on so concerned about traffic. People can't get out of the driveways. People can't go here. People can't go there because it's gridlocked from the freeway all the way down to Avenue 52. And so I think we are the folks that approve these plans. So if that's the case, then how do we
reverse
I-
that. We
I
went
think
to
early-
minimum.
Modify them.
Early engagement with Golden Voice is going to be optimal because they start planning a year out. I mean, and
Yeah, we
they're
probably
thorough.
missed 22 on like the shuttle issue.
Yeah,
but
they're-
23 we can focus on.
They're very thorough with it. But the thing is that, we're not going to be able to fix every issue when we have the concert. There's going to be a lot of people.
Right.
But that's a good thing too. Once they're gone and we have some revenue, because let me tell you, our first concert there with Pearl Jam, I had no idea that there was a concert. You know how I knew? Because I went to Super Saver after a high school football game, and it was packed with people buying water and ice. And well, what's going on? Was a concert here? Well, Super Saver made a killing, and same thing over at Stater Brothers. There was a YouTuber over, and they post on social media. Hey, there's this YouTuber at Stater Brothers, and there was so many teenagers over at Stater Brothers. I got locked in there. So, we're not going to be able to fix everything, but we need to capture those folks. And thinking innovatively is going to be, the way we got to do it.
I think there's a couple of ways we can do it. First off, with Golden Voice, we've dealt with them enough. We need to take an art piece with them and partner with them so that we always have it. Every year there's an art piece that we can get from them and rotate it in and out. We have plenty of places in our city to do it. Then we can make a map that we can have all the time for people to go through murals and different stuff, like a way around it. As we add in CV links, they can do other stuff. So, we have that music way and everything. The second thing is we've always talked to them about doing a museum. We have a building, they have the artwork. Mr. Hagen's son used to take all the pictures and had them all over the place of that. Plus Golden Voice has all kinds of posters and other stuff. We could do it, even if it's temporary, working with the History Museum. We can bring people in there to see how it started, how Golden Voice, how all the concerts come. It's involved over 20 years. And then the third thing is we have the opportunities with the shuttles, and the chief will do. Bringing them all into the middle of the city, I think you're asking for trouble.
Right.
That's just my personal opinion. That's me. I mean, with our residents, we're already pushing it with short-term rentals. You start bringing buses through the city, we're going to really have problems. Not that it's not a good thing if we plan it,
Right.
but we can have strategic locations where we can ask Golden Voice, hey, how about downtown? Can you have a shuttle coming from here to downtown, and from there it goes to Indian Wells? Or we can bring a bus or two through the city, drop them off at strategic locations. Then the bus goes through, so we're not going through the whole city of bothering people. That drops people in downtown. They can go from there. We can drop them at one or two different locations that they want to go. We already go to the hotel, so there's not a big deal. But think it strategically, but have something for them to do if we have the new opportunities there. But you got to think strategically. You start dropping a bunch of people into the middle of the city, and it starts to, we're going to have problems with our own residents who have their lives to do it.
I think-
So I capture some of it, but don't capture all
Yeah.
of it. Small bites.
Small parts.
Small
Start
bites.
slow.
But the part of moving them to Indian Wells is they're close to the hotels.
Close to the
They're
hotel.
close to the hotels
Also,
over
it took them off of. our
But it took
main
'em off the
road,
streets.
Monroe bottleneck, Monroe and then bottleneck.
But there's still traffic that goes through there. There's
Oh,
still
I know,
traffic
but
on
not
there
as bad.
that we can still capture. And if those folks that are going straight to the hotel, that's different. But if you have folks staying in short-term rentals, they're not getting on the bus. Those are folks that are staying at the hotel or going into Palm Springs, but we still need to capture what's here.
But if we
And
can give them that opportunity to get on a bus or go to downtown, and have a
Yeah.
place where we have some entertainment.
We have
bars and
entertainment.
other stuff,
yeah, we have
that'll
entertainment.
bring them
We partner with Sunline. Hey, let's get a bus taking them to these locations. Hey, there's somebody performing downtown. Let's get a small little route during the festivals to come downtown, and this bus will be back to pick you up. And that goes inside with the transportation we're talking about. If folks are jumping off the train coming from Los Angeles, hey, we got a trolley or a bus dropping you off downtown, have a good time, jump on the train, go back to
down
LA.
Boulevard, hit Fred Waring, and go straight to the tennis garden, drop them off, and
Yeah.
then go from there. Wherever they want to.
2-for-1 drinks
Yeah.
downtown.
Oh, that'll be good. Yeah. Oh, my God.
That'll bring them downtown.
Wow.
Just to the mayor's point about who establishes the shuttles and so forth, that's determined by Golden Voice. However, we're in the meetings now with them to already discuss logistics. From Golden Voice's perspective, we're all saying the same thing. They've solved the problem that we've presented. And so if we were to go back to them now and to reassess, I think they'd be open and willing to discuss. But the important thing is we need to be at the table with them now. And those meetings have already begun. So but we are at the table. Be happy to bring that up if that is the CMs.
Well, I think it is, and that's the consensus here, except the chief, when we've talked about this in the past, so we exhaust our law enforcement capacity at the site to the point that we're actually importing a significant amount. We need to then have something that would come downtown from that contingent or add to our law enforcement contingent. So maybe quickly, chief, on that point.
So I'll start with the traffic issues. A third of the people camp, a third of the people shuttle, and the other third are Uber folks. So I'm not sure you're going to change that dynamic. Really, the shuttles are going to and from hotels. And Golden Voice contracts every single motor coach this side of the Mississippi. That's how big this is. You're not going to get another motor coach. The city of Indio is not going to get it.
Even Sunline, do they contract all the Sunlines vehicles?
I don't think they use Sunline, no.
So that's, even if it's just one, we divert one or two to get them downtown to something.
But yes, we're at capacity. I beg you not to add any more to the plate. We literally cancel everyone's days off. We have folks that work 7 days a week for a month, 12 to 16-hour plus days.
And I think that's an opportunity to partner with College of the Desert as well. If
So additional private security available,
So
the
they-
other
with
law enforcement.
the bulk of the staffing for Golden Voice for helping us out is the security aspect. And then we bring in about 250 cops to run that concert, which is really a minuscule amount for the size of facility that we're operating in. So private security handles the vast majority of issues. It's only if we really need to make an arrest that we step in.
Well, I think it's one of those, if it's the desire, we need to find a way, and, whether that's encouraging the day before or the day after, hold people over, have them come a day sooner, we can capture some, maybe it doesn't have such a strain on the.
Or access the locals, the week before.
But this may not be a this year thing, but
Yeah.
we just extended our contract to 2050. So we can evolve there. Our department evolve. We could get people bust around, but what are they going to do? So as we develop downtown, we develop these restaurants and nice places to hang out and the train, and then we could really be aggressive with moving people around like this.
I think there'll be more amenities here, and we're within, over the next year, we know what's going to happen down here. But to start back to Scott's point, we can start some of these discussions, maybe these early meetings that, there is a little bit of a shift from what we've told you. The traffic is still a concern, but now we feel like the pendulum has swung too far. Not that we want to swing it all the way back, but if there's a way to start moving it back over the next year or two, we want more and more opportunity, whatever ideas they may have. If it's diverting one or two buses for free drinks to get them down here, something like that.
But the mayor made a good point about that art project. If we did something down here with the cacti and some of the other things that we're going to get, folks are going to come down here to take pictures.
They remember,
That's-
if they're attendees from previous events, they'll want to
Yeah.
start Barla the same way.
And like the last meeting, when you brought us that idea of having the QR code with some of the plaques and some of the things like that, those are going to be take pictures and say, hey, look, I was at Coachella. Well, that says Indio, but that's where it's at. And so we want one of those signs with these art pieces, folks go take pictures and make memories downtown.
And on that note, I'm going to turn this over. Wayman, I have a 7:30 meeting and Oscar has raised his hand. I want to say thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We just keep talking. We forget
I-
about
it's so
Oscar.
great. Of all nights for me to have to get to a 7:30 meeting at Indian Palms, I apologize.
No, it's okay. I think we probably are winding down, but maybe if Oscar wants to make a comment, then Kevin had a follow-up. Oscar, do you want to jump ahead?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, the Cella event that they have right before the festival is really popular. And I saw that, it's been growing over the past couple of years. So I do like that idea. And also, I guess, just thinking about, what are people going to do before the event, right? And so if we had some kind of, everybody has to eat in the morning, right? So if we had some kind of morning event with food trucks or something like that down in downtown, maybe that would attract people near the cacti. And then also, we got to think about who our residents during that time, what would they want to do? People who can't make it to the festivals, right? Maybe they want to go to the restaurants, see it. I know they play it live on YouTube as well. So I've done that sometimes where we have viewing parties, right? So you just have a party, throw it on YouTube, and you're watching the concert with all your friends who couldn't make it to the concert, right? And also in between, right? We have those days in between the concerts, those 5 days. So what can we get for our residents going to keep that kind of momentum going throughout those 2 weekends? As far as the murals, I think that was a good idea by Mayor Holmes we need an Indio mural, right? I think that they just made one in Coachella that has a huge Coachella in big letters, and then it has the mariachi skeleton and the roses and sunflowers, very colorful. And I've seen tons of people taking pictures there, so I think that's a really good idea as well. And also just making sure that in our murals and in all of our other arts, we include our locals in those programs, because like Wayman said, that's going to bring their families down, and that's going to just increase that confidence in our artists so they can keep growing and going forward. I think we should be the ones to be giving them some of those opportunities here as well. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Well, any other general comments, Kevin? I think you had a follow up.
Just super fast. I wonder if there might be opportunities to maybe, I think the Mayor Pro Tem used the word welcome back, maybe to do some through combination of temporary signage, maybe temporary artwork at key points people are entering the city to emphasize first, welcome back. Second, you're in Indio, so highlighting that you're in Indio. And if there's things where people could go like a pop-up, take your picture here kind of thing, maybe having some way to direct them, maybe just through some temporary signage and other tools, we could really emphasize that you're here in the city of Indio.
Yeah, I think this idea of a photo, it could be a photo opportunity with a mural, with block letters, as you see in other cities. And we get plants to hashtag, we do it ourselves. We get all the city staff to drive some interest so that people see it, know where to come. Makes sense.
Yeah.
One last point. So we're in the midst of planning right now for 2022. We're having a hard, we were just told that some of our partner agencies, they're hurting for staff like we are. So for instance, Palm Springs is not going to be able to, they only have a few motor officers. So those are the concerns for this specific year. So as Mayor Pro Tem Herman says, it's something we're going to need to grow into. I don't know if we can pull it off this year.
No,
Yeah, I think if we start planting the seeds with Golden Voice this year and these meetings and other opportunities, that we need that pendulum to swing back a little bit. We'll have more in 2023 downtown for them. There's a day before day. The idea of locals too, this is kind of new to me. I think it's a great idea. Whether we have a big screen at our stage downtown and people could watch either at the same time Coachella is going on, or we get one of these warm-up bands to come over a day before and stay later for the locals.
Well, Hagen's folks talked about at the marketplace having the Jumbotron there. So that might be an opportunity to actually show it there as well. As we continue these talks with Golden Voice, I mean, there's a few things that we could do, partnerships with the community, bringing some other performers here, maybe partnering with the school district, bringing some of the students there, meet and greets and things like that. There's a lot of things we could do, but at the same time, we could also talk to Golden Voice and see things that they might have done to liven some of the communities up, because I'm pretty sure they want to grow with us as well, as we just, extended our contract with them. So there's a lot of things that we could do, but we're on board and we're open for suggestions.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to mention, just to keep in consideration, usually these bands have a contract with Golden Voice where they can't play in this area around that time, except for the concert. So just one thing to keep in mind, we might have to bring other artists or even like the Amp Kids or local bands, right? But the artists that are playing in the concert, usually they're not able to play around that time.
Yeah, it'd have to be something negotiated with Golden Voice ahead of time. Yeah, so they allow that.
But it may not even just be Golden Voice. We have other promoters. We have requests out for our downtown, and if we have the largest and most popular music festival in the world. So if we have Coachella going on at the Polo Grounds, you have a promoter here locally who could reach out to some artists in LA. They would love to be part of Indio to say, hey, I was in India when Coachella was going on, and these are the folks that came. And when you give them this opportunity, who knows who might pop up, even at Coachella, they might have a lineup, but they have artists that just pop up, so I think that's something that we could grow into. I think we're going to get there. We want people downtown. We're going to get them downtown. We're going to generate some revenue. And we have the festivals and we got to capitalize off of it.
Sounds like a plan. In fact, that's probably a good segue to the fact that we as a staff need to go back. If a lot of these other items that, of course, we didn't discuss, but we want to make sure that we have the capacity financially and staff-wise. An example might be the security for the events downtown, if it's at the same time or right before or after Coachella Stagecoach. So we'll do that. I know there's another item or area or two that we can get to in the next section, maybe as this part of a study session at a council meeting. But we'll start doing some work and bring back some costs. Rob mentioned the one-time discussion that we have. Again, that's a little bit funner and we know there's money there. These operational ones, I just feel like we need some time as staff to make sure we have a good handle on what they cost. So Mayor Pro Tem, I think we're okay if we wanted to break off now.
Yeah, I think we have some direction. It's exciting. I mean, we were very picky on some things, but I think we're just refining this machine that we already have moving forward. We need to get Rob some more money that he could operate with. And so I think we're good. And
Sounds great. This is very critical to staff, by the way, to hear you in this informal setting, provide this direction. So thank you.
yep, and it's 7:27. If no one has any other further comments, we'll adjourn this discussion. Oh, we're good.
Thank you.